Chapter 50. In the laboratory, Chen-Ong was wearing orange goggles as he stared at the spindle-shaped engine that was humming as it ran on the experiment table. The sparkling blue light flickered. The machine was running stably and excellently. Chen-Ong nodded slightly at the research institute next to him. He saw dozens of researchers facing the computer in front of them solemnly. Countless complicated commands were inputted one by one. On the experiment table, the machine that was bound to the ground by dozens of locks was unlocked one by one. The engine was suspended in the air. Blue electromagnetic waves flickered faintly. A subtle but stable energy was transmitted from the engine's output to an instrument. The blue light that represented the energy input flickered twice and lit up steadily. "It's a success." The researchers present were excited. They stood up from their seats and crowded around the experiment table. They looked at the brand-new machine that represented the most advanced technology on Earth. Although the experiment was a success, Chen-Eng's face was still calm. Not only him, but even the old men in white coats beside him did not have much joy on their faces. Their engine has been successfully operated, but we are still so far away from the anti-gravity engine. It is even more hopeless, the old professor lamented. The science and technology that Chen-Ong had brought back from the interstellar era had encountered unimaginable research difficulties on Earth. These technologies that were separated from Earth for more than 30 centuries had an insurmountable gap with the current system. Many of the basic technologies were explained from the perspective of the interstellar industry. Even for the most basic alloy steel, the interstellar era had long surpassed the mainstream smelting technology on Earth. Instead, they used magnetic fluid to smelt metal atoms and the magnetic induction molding method to produce them with the precision of atomic nuclei. This kind of high-tech technology that required the creation of gravitational and magnetic force on the level of a white dwarf was something that Earth could not even touch. A small anti-gravity engine was closely related to the entire industrial system. Each of its connecting parts originated from high-end technologies that were already common at that time but were still far away from Earth. Space, gravity, and electromagnetism were technologies that were easily controlled by humans in the interstellar era. They were the basics that even children knew. However, on Earth, they were still cutting-edge technologies that had just begun to sprout. With Chen-Eng's strength alone, trying to restore this great power was as laughable as the great scientists of Earth trying to build a car with stones in the primitive era. Tens of thousands of planets, thousands of races, and the great power accumulated over tens of thousands of years, with Earth as the foundation, could only peep outside the door. Of course, Earth's civilization, which had the accumulation of interstellar technology, and human society, which had unlocked the shackles of wisdom, was bound to have infinite potential. Chen-Ong believed that, given some time, they would definitely be able to rejuvenate the achievements of the Milky Way Republic. The development of the overclocking medicine for the development of the brain and the improvement of the evolution medicine for the extension of life allowed the Earth civilization to stand ahead of the Milky Way Republic in the field of human evolution. Even in the interstellar era, these two potions had incomparable significance. However, this still required time, and it was bound to be a long process, one that took centuries as the basic unit of calculation. How could the scientists who knew some of the inside information not sigh? Seeing that the glorious civilization was right in front of them, and that the truth was so close at hand, these scientists, who pursued the higher truth their whole life, were crazy about it. However, they were limited by their own level of understanding and the development of society, so they had no choice but to repeat the mistakes, wasting away the civilization. Facing the silver disk that was floating in the air, the old professor stared at this glorious civilization that represented the interstellar era in a daze. He stroked its silvery white streamlined body inch by inch, and it was only when Chen-Ong came up behind him that he barely reacted. "How's the evolution medicine?" Chen Ong asked calmly as he flipped through the experimental records of this period of time. The old professor suddenly came back to his senses. He realized that he had lost his composure and hurriedly activated the overclocking state. With a cold expression and calm tone, he replied, "Everything is going smoothly with the evolution medicine. Human experiments have shown that it has effectively maintained the health of the human body. The state of the cells shows that adult men who have been injected with the evolution medicine can generally live up to 300 years, with at least 250 years being the peak of their health." Chen Ong frowned and said, "This is the result of the genetics laboratory. What about the mysticism?" "According to the mysticism information you provided, Doctor, the basic preparation that uses the blood orchid as the raw material has a somewhat strange effect. According to research, it has an amazing effect on some mysticism personnel, but for ordinary people, it only has half the effect of the evolution medicine, and it still needs to be taken for a long time. According to the research of volunteer number 37, he is a Buddhist monk with average physical fitness. However, after taking the blood orchid, his organs showed the effect of breaking through the physiological limit. His metabolism became extremely slow, and the lifespan of his cells reached an amazing level of thousands of years. With the great circulation of spiritual energy, Chen Ong somewhat understood. He stopped the old professor's endless stream of experimental data and asked calmly, "How's the research on breaking through the shackles of the evolution medicine?" At this point, the old professor raised his head somewhat indignantly and replied somewhat unwillingly, "It's not bad. The test subjects of the evolution medicine have shown good physical fitness and even have an amazing ability to adapt to the environment. Test subject number 12, a fisherman who is excellent at swimming by the sea, has even evolved a second set of human circulation. However, this kind of evolution is completely incompatible with the brain development represented by the overclocking medicine. Those evolved people can't accept the brain development of the overclocking medicine, and similarly, our genes can't accept the stimulation of the evolution medicine." "You've done human experiments." Chen Ong abruptly turned his head and stared at him. The old professor was silent for a long time. The blue light in his eyes fluctuated violently, and he said with difficulty, "Yes, I violated the experimental rules and conducted human experiments without authorization. The results were not optimistic. All the volunteers who were injected with the two kinds of medicine at the same time developed a terrible genetic disease." Chen Ong looked at him silently. The old professor retreated from the overclocking state. He grabbed his sparse hair in frustration and stumbled to the ground. Suddenly, he covered his face and sobbed, "It's all my fault, Sia. Sia listened to my theory and injected herself with an evolution medicine. The gene stabilizer we made with the blood orchid lost its effect in just 3 months. Sia was his daughter. Where is she now?" Chen Ong looked at the pitiful man and sighed. "Gene stabilization room." The old man raised his head. There was a deep sense of bewilderment on his face. "We couldn't hold on any longer. Fortunately, Doctor, you brought new technology. Now she's frozen in the gene stabilization room. Skynet, remove Professor Ronan's authority as the main person in charge and list human experiments as the third category," Chen Ong said slowly. On the ceiling, a silver-white stream of light flashed. In the huge information flow that presided over the entire underground laboratory, a complicated change of authority was quietly happening. The old professor undid the ID on his chest and placed it at Chen Ang's feet. His originally tall and straight body now looked a little crooked and even old. "You have to take responsibility for what you've done," Chen Ong said slowly, "but Sia shouldn't. She'll be a key project. You'll be in charge of the research on gene collapse and genetic diseases." The old professor suddenly covered his face uncontrollably. Turbid tears dripped onto his hand and a muffled "thank you" made Chen Ong, who had turned to leave, slow down his footstep. However, He did not look back and still left with firm footstep. The laboratory was developing at a high speed. There were new breakthroughs every moment, and the height of Earth's civilization was refreshed every day. The results of every breakthrough here were enough to refresh human scientific research since the beginning of the 21st century. The thriving and vigorous development momentum was incomparable, just like the E group in the endless world. Chernong, on the other hand, was showing signs of stagnation in the evolution of his life force. The analysis and development of his life force were both difficult and slow, and the development of his brain was like a death knell that was approaching Chen Ang's limits bit by bit. The level of life that had improved due to his life force was quickly caught up by the development of his brain. His accumulation of inner force had dried up. The accumulation from the smiling, proud wanderer was quickly exhausted. Although the amount of inner force was still increasing by leaps and bounds, the exploration and evolution of its essence had almost come to a standstill. Without a deep accumulation, it would be difficult to make rapid progress. Inner force was the link of life and the hub through which Chen Ong sensed origin force. Its slow and stagnation directly affected Chen Ang's path of evolution. A new round of exploration was imperative. This time, he should go to a world where martial arts were more prosperous, a time when inner force was closer to its essence. Chapter 51. Riding on the wind on the sword, I will vanquish the evil between heaven and earth. Chen Ong stepped on the silver plate and soared above the 9 heavens. His loose clothes fluttered in the wind. Chen Ang's expression was indifferent. He had the bearing of an immortal in his feather robe and star crown. If ordinary people saw him, they would be shocked. In terms of trickery, no one in the world could compare to Chen Ong. There was no possibility of exposing him. Psychology, hypnosis, soul-shifting, origin power persuasion. In terms of manipulating people's minds, Chen Ong was born to be a cult leader. If he could establish a religion, it would definitely become a big deal and even change the world. It was not impossible for him to call himself a god. Unfortunately, the means were not the end. Chen Ong might use these methods to achieve his goal, but he would definitely not be willing to make these foolish things his life's pursuit. But sometimes, using these small methods could shorten the time needed to achieve his goal. Chen Ong would not be so stupid as to abandon them. That was why he dressed up like this today, to trick someone important in his plan. Bianliang was far more prosperous than other places. Even from thousands of miles in the sky, one could clearly see the heart of the Great Song Empire, the most prosperous dynasty in the world. It was rich, beautiful, and resplendent. Compared to other countries of the same era, the Great Song was as beautiful as heaven. Unfortunately, this prosperity was about to be destroyed by the flames of war in the blink of an eye. It was already the first year of Zhezong's ascension. There were only 6 years left until Zhezong passed away and 30 years until the shame of Jinkong. At that time, Bianliang would have already fallen into the flames of war. But now it was still a bustling market. This was the only city in the world that never slept. The prosperous business made Bianliang still bustling at night. Zhao Su was bent over the desk in the library, pointing at a volume of Ziji Tongjian in his hand. Suddenly, he heard noises coming from outside. "What is it?" he asked with a frown. The servant beside him quietly opened the door and looked outside. He was stunned by what he saw. Zhao Su looked up in confusion and got up to take a look. Suddenly, the door opened silently. The servant scrambled to Zhao Su's feet and kowtowed with a trembling voice. "Sir, it's an immortal. It's an immortal." "Nonsense," Zhao Su scolded, flicked his sleeves, and walked out the door. He wanted to see who was playing tricks on him. Even though he was mentally prepared, when he saw Chen Ong, he could not help but feel a sense of awe. Chen Ong floated high above the 9 heavens, like a celestial being in the moon, looking straight at him. Zhao Su hesitated. Even though he did not believe in ghosts and gods, he had no choice but to be respectful in the presence of celestials. I wonder if Zhenren wants to give me the cardinal in person? Although he still had some doubts in his heart, the fact that Chen Ong was able to barge into the palace meant that his life was in someone else's hands. Furthermore, Chen Ong didn't look like a fanatic assassin. Zhao Su could accept it if he gave in on the surface. Chen Ong listened to his words and only smiled slightly. You don't believe me, but you have to believe in your own eyes. Even if you don't believe in your own eyes, you should believe in your judgment. Come with me first. As the silver disc flashed, Zhao Su's body involuntarily floated up. Following the pull of the gravitational light, he stood firmly on the silver disc. At this time, Zhao Su calmed down. No swindler would be able to pull out such a big trick. Zhao Su did not think that anyone could trick him. How can there be no wine when there's a moon? Chen Ong smiled and waved his sleeves, gathering a cloud and letting the two of them float on it. An invisible hand held a wine cup in front of Zhao Su. Zhao Su's eyes flashed, and he picked up the cup thoughtfully. How can there be no singing and dancing when there's wine? Chen Ong clapped his hands a few times. Suddenly, a rainbow light appeared in the sky. Several graceful dancers swayed their waists and danced on the cloud, singing and dancing. They were like goddesses, captivating people's hearts. Even an emperor like Zhao Su could not help but be moved. The Enlightened One's celestial arts have truly broadened my horizons. Zhao Su was, after all, an emperor. His shrewdness allowed him to quickly conceal his loss of composure. However, he was still immature, and the uncontrollable shock in his eyes completely exposed him. These are all small tricks. Chen Ong waved his hand to disperse all the illusions. He asked seriously, "Let me ask you, do you want to live forever?" This question was earth-shattering. Zhao Su's hand that was holding the wine cup trembled, and the wine spilled out. Longevity. Even the great talents of the first emperor, the hegemony of the Han dynasty, and the brilliance of the Li dynasty's founding emperor were obsessed with longevity. Ever since Zhao Su ascended to the throne, his health had been deteriorating. At a young age, he already felt unwell. His dream was to live a long and healthy life, let alone live forever. Enlightened One. Zhao Su's eyes were filled with excitement and nervousness. Do you have an elixir of immortality? Ha. If I had an elixir of immortality, I'd be living a carefree life myself. Why would I come to see you? Chen Ong said bluntly. I'm not even immortal myself. What can I give you? Enlightened One, there's no need to lie to me. I'm willing to offer you a rare treasure from the Imperial Palace for you to take. All I ask for is immortality. Zhao Su's breathing was a bit unsteady. He didn't even need Chen Ang's signal before he offered up his treasures. Even an ordinary quack would know when to stop, in order to gain Zhao Su's trust, and then take the next step in his plan. However, Chen Ong was not an ordinary charlatan. He sneered and pointed at the mountains and rivers below. Other than these mountains and rivers, what other wealth do you have to buy immortality? Don't dirty my eyes with gold, stones, pearls, and jade. Enlightened One must have a request for coming here. May I ask what it is? At the mention of the Song dynasty, Zhao Su temporarily regained his composure. He thought for a while and concluded that Chen Ong had a request. Otherwise, there would be no need for him to go through so much trouble to meet the emperor. What I want is immortality. Can you give it to me? Chen Ong smiled. It's not wrong to say that I have a request. I want to borrow a ladder from you. A ladder that leads to immortality. What ladder? Enlightened One, please explain. If it's within my power, I'll do as you say. Zhao Su asked. He wanted the other party to ask for power and wealth. Unfortunately, Chen Ang's request was not that simple. I want your majesty to grant me the power to make decisions in the martial world. Chen Ang's words were shocking. He wanted to seize power the moment he opened his mouth. Zhao Su was so shocked that he stood up. Just as he was about to refuse, he suddenly had a thought. He thought to himself, after all, the affairs of the martial world have never affected the nation. Even if he controls the martial world, it may not be more harmful than taking away military power. I've heard that the people of the martial world are unruly, and lawless. Perhaps the strategy of driving the wolf to swallow the tiger is feasible. The more Zhao Su thought about it, the more he felt that it made sense. He did not feel that there was anything wrong with his words. Instead, he looked spirited and intelligent. In a flash, he had thought of dozens of ways to keep Chen Ong in check. He did not know that these were hints from Chen Ong. Instead, he felt that he had great talent and could control immortals. I and the scholarly officials rule the world. I don't have the power to make decisions in the nation. Now that the new and old parties are at odds with each other, I can't do anything even if I propose something. Thinking of the reality, Zhao Su could not help but sigh and complain. It doesn't matter. I've heard that your majesty has the ambition to conquer the world. Because the king of Xixia is rampant, he has become hostile with Xixia. There are many arguments in the world, and the imperial court is also talking about it. If your majesty can conquer Xixia with the power to destroy the nation, you can control the overall situation. Chen Ong reached out and took out 2 silver marbles. They were the size of a thumb and looked crystal clear. These were 2 three-phase infrasonic bombs. They were the energy-fusing weapons that Chen Ong had brought back from the interstellar space. I have 2 Tai soundless godly thunder, which can sweep away people and animals within a radius of several miles without harming the plant. I also have a Gongshu secret record. There are dozens of secret methods of iron making, mining, smelting, drying salt, planting, mechanisms, and so on. They can be of help to your majesty. Zhao Su took a deep breath and held the 2 godly thunder in his hands. He was overwhelmed with emotions. Then, he saw a small jade box appear in Chen Ang's hand. He handed it to Zhao Su. Zhao Su opened it and saw 2 blood-red elixirs. The smell of blood made Zhao Su's index finger move and his tongue salivate. He endured the pain in his body and raised his head to look at Chen Ong. These are 2 prolongation elixirs. They have the effect of nourishing the body and prolonging life. If your majesty doesn't believe me, you can give it a try. Chen Ong flicked his sleeves and left the 2 blood orchid elixirs in Zhao Su's hands. Zhao Su felt his vision blur, and then he was on the ground. The panicked eunuchs quickly surrounded him. Ask the imperial physician to come to my palace, Zhao Su ordered. After a short while, a white-haired old man was brought in front of him. The old doctor picked up a blood-red elixir, sniffed it under his nose, and said with certainty, "This is an elixir to nourish the body and prolong life. However, I have never heard of one of the main ingredients, so I can't be sure." "I know. You can leave now." Zhao Su's expression was indecipherable. He hurriedly crawled into the secret chamber. The eunuchs outside were not allowed to enter, so they could only hear Zhao Su's muffled groans. After a long time, silence returned. The trembling eunuchs outside heard Zhao Su's voice coming from within. "Men, I want to draft a decree." Zhao Su, who looked 4 to 5 years younger, walked out from the secret chamber. His face was flushed red, and he stretched his body with joy. "Drafting my decree. Head of the Imperial Army, from today onwards, I will select strong and loyal warriors to be the guards of my palace. They will be called the Imperial Army of the Front Palace, and they will be divided into the Xiang Dragon and Crouching Tiger Guards, led by the Imperial Army head. Order the Deputy Commissioner of the Bureau of Military Affairs to see me." Chapter 52. There were many books in the inner palace. There were many old libraries that had not been opened for many years. The bookshelves were filled with all kinds of scrolls. The people of the Song dynasty loved books and learning. Since the founding of the Song dynasty, the emperor had ordered scholars to compile a collection of books for the imperial reading. There were more than 100,000 scrolls, not to mention the magnificent imperial reading of peace. Even the Song dynasty's Taoist canon of longevity was being compiled by the Dragon Diagram Pavilion. It was not a lie to say that cultivation was easy in the palace. Chen Ong flipped through a bookshelf that Zhao Su often visited and found many ancient books that had long been lost. Many of them were the experiences of predecessors in cultivating qi. Many obscure goldstone tadpole script were hidden in the depths of the inner palace because no one could translate them. There were many halls that stored metal, stone, and antique. There were also a vast collection of books in the library. In order to compile the imperial books of the past emperors, the inner palace had collected countless books from all over the world. It could be said that 80% of the world's knowledge was hidden in the inner palace. Many ancient and unique books were abandoned in the depths of the palace due to the obscure characters. These days, Chen Ong roamed the sea of books. He was truly free and unfettered. Many of the abandoned libraries were opened by him, and the scrolls inside were all dried up one by one. Even Zhao Su had no choice but to follow his wishes. He ordered the learned scholars of the Hanlin Academy and the Dragon Diagram Pavilion to organize the book. In reality, Chen Ong was in charge of this compilation. Chen Ong had directly facilitated the compilation of the largest collection of books in the Song dynasty after the Imperial Survey of Taiping, by examining the ancient texts and describing the way of heaven and man. On the one hand, the newly formed Imperial Guard of the Front Palace was undergoing strict training and learning. Chen Ong had even brought 80% of the evolution potion from the world of Limitless. He had even personally created a divine technique for them. Using the scientific martial arts of the world of Star Wars as inspiration, he used the evolution potion to mutate the blood in the body, the Black Tortoise True technique. On the other hand, Chen Ong did not interfere with the management of the Imperial Army. Instead, he immersed himself in the compilation of ancient texts. His vast knowledge shocked many scholars, and it was only natural that he became the chief editor of this compilation. As a result, Chen Ang's identity as the commander of the Imperial Guards in front of the palace was finally accepted by the people of the Song dynasty. There were even great scholars of that time who believed that Chen Ang's knowledge surpassed all the scholars in the world. Whether it was the bone of tortoise, dragon Zhang Fengwan, as long as it was calligraphy and writing, there was nothing that Chen Ong was not proficient in. All the scholars who came into contact with him gasped in admiration. The governor of Xiang Dragon and Crouching Tiger, the erudite scholar Chen. Very few people knew that these two legendary figures who shook Bianliang were actually the same person. There were already calls in the imperial court to overthrow Chen Ong, Scholar Chen. If Chen Ong was really a white-haired old man, with his reputation, it would not be difficult for him to enter the imperial court and become the prime minister. As the classics that Chen Ong presided over spread out from the imperial court, even the 3-year-old children in Bianliang had heard of his name. In an instant, Scholar Chen's name spread all over the country, and he was regarded as one of the great scholars of the current era. Even Scholar Dongpa, who had been demoted from afar, had publicly praised Chen Ang's knowledge, monopolizing 3 parts of the world. For a time, the world was praising 3 parts of the scholar. When the news reached Zhao Su's ears, he was even more convinced of Chen Ang's identity as an immortal who pretended to be mysterious. He was even more convinced of the saying that martial arts could lead to immortality. With the annotations and reappearance of the classics, and even the rediscovery of the ancient writings, many of the lost classics from the 100 schools of thought were rediscovered. When the half-volume of the Book of Music, one of the 6 classics of Confucius, appeared, it shocked all the scholars of the world. Many scholars of the current era volunteered to participate in this unprecedented event of the Confucian school, even at the cost of abandoning their official positions. It was recorded that the great book collectors of the common people drove the carriages from Kaifeng to Bianliang in an endless stream, and the wheels of the carriages formed a continuous line. Outside the imperial palace, The collection of books in the courtyard of the Hanlin Academy was piled up to 2 stories high. Zhao Su even had to send out the Imperial Guard, who had just finished cleaning up, to guard these precious collections day and night. Every day, the number of ancient books sent to the Dragon Diagram Pavilion for Chen Ong to read reached as many as 3,000. The number of great scholars gathered in the Imperial Palace numbered more than 100, and the number of scholars who came to copy books numbered more than 1,000. The imperial scholar Huang Chang of the Dragon Diagram Pavilion even had to open up the abandoned palace for the scholars to live in. Huang Chang held a bundle of old bamboo slips and stood on the narrow window-sill, trying to decipher the words on them with difficulty. Whenever he had doubts, he would copy down the words. Such records had accumulated into a thick stack in front of him. Beside him, a white-haired scholar tiredly put down the ancient scroll in his hand. He blew out the fish oil candle in front of him and said in a low voice to the person beside him, "The Emperor sends troops to provoke Western Xia day and night. Such a provocation at the border is not the behavior of a wise ruler." Before the person beside him could reply, he hastily stood up and said, "Scholar Chen." "Greetings, Scholar Chen." Chen Ong slowly walked over from the side and nodded slightly at the two. He saw Huang Chang, who was proofreading at the side, and said, "Come with me." Huang Chang hastily stood up and quickly walked to Chen Ang's side. "Scholar, is there a problem with the school team of the classics department? Or is there something wrong with the Qi cultivation department, the Tao governance department, the ghost department, and the monster department? Come with me to see the Emperor first. I have something important to entrust to you," Chen Ong slowly said. He glanced at Huang Chang and said, "The way of heaven is to take away the surpluses and make up for the deficiencies. Therefore, the void triumphs over the real, and the deficiency triumphs over the excess. The meaning is broad, the theory is profound, and the interest is deep. The division of heaven and earth, the marquee of yin and yang, the changes are superficial, and the signs of life and death. You have studied hard day and night and received orders to proofread the longevity Taoist canon. You have already understood the true meaning of the scripture. When I took a rough look at you, your internal and external cultivation has already reached a certain level. However, your qi is too thick and your qi is too dense. You have a wide range, but you lack precision. You should have been studying the scripture, and you will definitely succeed in 10 years. In the future, you will be a master of Taoism, a martial arts master of a generation." When Huang Chang heard this, he cupped his hands in shock and said, "This lowly official is confused. Sometimes I can feel the wind in my 2 ribs, and my body is light. But this lowly official only knows some breathing technique. Although I am proficient in them, I have never practiced them. I have only obtained some qi to nourish my body and prolong my life. How can I be called a martial arts master?" Chen Ong lightly said. The Yellow Emperor swam to the north of the Red River, climbed the Kunlun Hill and looked to the south. "Return, leave behind the Xian Pearl. Let the knowledge seek it, but not obtain it, let the vermilion seek it, but not obtain it, let the rebuke seek it, but not obtain it. Let the elephant lose its life, and the elephant lose its life." The Yellow Emperor said, "Strange, can the elephant lose its life? This is an allusion from the Southern Flower scripture, Heaven and Earth. It says that only when there is no thought, no sight, no speech, and the elephant lose its form and form, can one obtain the Tao. The elephant is indistinct, unclear, and chaotic. Therefore, the most natural way to obtain the Tao is to combine qi with qi. Only in this way can there be and no form, and the void and the real coexist." Chen Ong quoted this passage because he wanted to say that Huang Chang, in his ignorance, had mastered the principles of martial arts. It was the same as Xiang Wang, a faintly discernible method of attaining Tao. It was a natural and profound principle. When you read the 10,000 years Taoist scripture, you have already understood the Tao in your heart. When your wisdom is awakened, you will naturally become proficient in the most profound principles of martial arts. You must know that the most profound principles of martial arts are not in the secret books of Jianghu, but in the teachings of Taoism and Buddhism. Bodhidharma comprehended the Buddhist scriptures and learned the peerless martial art. The unfettered one read the South Flower and learned the unfettered secret art. Since ancient times there have been many extraordinary people. Saints and sages have learned everything without a teacher. It is clear that the principles of the world are hidden in the world and are written by the sages. You are not ignorant of martial arts, but you have directly learned the Tao of martial arts. You have obtained the spirit and forgotten the form. Huang Chang stretched out his hand and said, "Ever since I started practicing the breathing technique, I only feel that my body is light and healthy. With one leap, I can reach a height of 30 feet. In the past, when I saw the Imperial Army practicing and the experts of the Imperial Palace spying on me, I could see some of it. I didn't know that I already had a body of martial arts. Unfortunately, this is not my goal." "Do you think that the Tao of martial arts is vulgar?" Chenong asked. "Killing with a knife is not the way of a gentleman." Huang Chang sighed. "I taught you to proofread the ancient characters because I wanted you to polish your knowledge and practice the Tao. You wanted to learn from the ancient sages and abandon your desire for fame and wealth. I didn't think that you would be so indifferent and lose the desire to forge ahead." Chenong sighed. He could see that Huang Chang really did not have the desire to forge ahead in martial arts and had lost the essence of killing. No wonder he had a blood feud and was only able to create the 9-yin Manual, a peerless martial art. If it wasn't for his hatred, perhaps he would have written the Golden Pill Essentials, Life Guard Essentials, and Heart-yin Scripture. Killing was the first goal of martial arts, and fighting for one's life was the first essence of martial art. The Tao of martial arts was to fight for one's life with the heavens, to fight for strength with the earth, to win against others, to surpass oneself in battle. Different from the simple art of inner alchemy, the Tao of martial arts was more intense and direct. In battle, to surpass oneself and sublimate one's life. Chen Eng's path to the Tao was like facing a cliff. If he was not careful, he would die a horrible death. Only the Tao of martial arts, the spirit of fighting for all things, was most suitable for him. It was also the path that allowed him to improve the fastest. Although fighting with others was not his original intention, fighting with himself was in line with his thoughts. Every moment, he was surpassing himself to pursue, to explore, and to fight against the heavens for his life. Even if it was to explore the world and sublimate oneself, it was achieved through constant fighting with oneself. The spirit of striving to improve oneself and the spirit of exploration were the principles that Chen Ong recognized. Although Huang Chang's indifferent spirit was worthy of praise, it did not fit with Chen Eng's general trend of promoting the development of martial arts. It also did not help the accumulation of martial arts knowledge. Fortunately, Huang Chang was in the imperial court. His life was tied to the glory of the Song dynasty. His recognition of the imperial court was very high. When the imperial court and the martial arts world went against each other and the conflict intensified, he would not be able to help himself. He would not be able to escape the name of the imperial court's dog. Moreover, he would be the imperial court's dog that would strike terror into the hearts of the martial arts world. He would be a demon that oppressed the martial arts world and a treacherous official who committed all sorts of evil. Chen Ong could even imagine that in the future, when the heroes of the martial arts world ganged up on him, this demon, Huang Chang, would be his most capable accomplice. Only such a grand trend could promote the development of martial art. There would be many wondrous martial arts, and there would be many grandmasters. If the martial arts world was not forced into a corner, how could there be heroes who could turn the tide? How could the martial arts world throw away their barriers and communicate with each other, work together to promote the development of martial arts? Chapter 53. Huang Chang followed Chen Ong to the outside of Jixian Tower. This was where Zhao Su liked to receive foreign officials. Occasionally, he would come here to read. Huang Chang did not dare to be rude and followed Chen Ong in respectfully. Although the Song dynasty was ruled by the emperor and the scholar officials, the status of the scholar officials was very high. Some of the older officials were even on equal footing with the emperor. Famous officials like Wang Engshi and Sima Guang were even respected. However, Huang Chang did not have the status of a chancellor or the reputation of a great scholar. He did not dare to put on airs in front of the emperor. Chen Ong, on the other hand, didn't care so much and walked straight in. The large Jixian Tower was brightly lit, but there was only one person sitting alone at the table. None of Zhao Su's servants were beside him. There were only 2 chairs in front of him. It was obvious that they were having a private conversation. Huang Chang hesitated for a moment before sitting down with Chen Ong. Zhao Su's face darkened. He held a scroll of History of Song in his hands, as if he was holding back something. Huang Chang's eyes were sharp, and he could clearly see the words History of Song written on the cover. He was shocked. Who would dare to revise the history of the dynasty? Bian Tuachuo, Kubilai, how daring! Zhao Su was enraged. He gripped the Song history book tightly and looked at Chen Ong with an agitated expression. Enlightened one, is this the destiny of our dynasty? Tong Guan, Kai Jing, and that useless Zhao Ji. How can I tolerate the shame of Jinkong? Destiny is not fixed. Your Majesty, you have lost your composure, Chen Ong reminded. Only then did Zhao Su return to his senses. His face regained its calm, but it was still dark and exceptionally ugly. He was silent for a long time before he said, "We will grant all of your requests. I only ask of you one thing." "Your Majesty, please speak," Zhao Su said seriously. "The heavens are not fixed. Can destiny be changed?" After he asked this, he didn't wait for Chen Ong to answer and added, "If you can, Zhenren, please do whatever you want to do. I will support you with all my strength. It's just that the ministers still have some doubts about the prohibition of martial arts and need me to mediate. I wonder if Taoist master can personally convince those stubborn ones." Chen Ong smiled and said, "Is there anyone in particular that your Majesty wants to kill?" Zhao Su was slightly taken aback, but he immediately understood. He looked at the unnatural expression on Huang Chang's face and sneered, "I feel that Minister Kai is not bad. He is indeed a loyal and uncorrupted official." He said the last 2 words through gritted teeth. The 36 rules of the martial arts prohibition still need to be discussed by the court. Perfected cultivator Chen, I will have to trouble you to clean up the martial arts world. The Taoist master has full authority to command the Imperial Guard in front of the palace. Life and death, rewards and punishments are all decided by the Taoist master. I have already removed the Imperial Guard commanders from their positions in front of the palace. I wonder who the deputy commander's position belongs to? Chen Ong pulled Huang Chang over and said with a smile, "Uncle One is worthy of such a great responsibility." When Huang Chang heard this, he turned pale with fright. He had been listening to the conversation between the 2 of them from the side, and he felt as if there was a blade on his back. He was drenched in cold sweat, and now Chen Ong wanted to drag him down with him. He wished he had never appeared here. Without waiting for Huang Chang to decline, Zhao Su agreed. Just as Perfected Cultivator said, Huang Chang will command the Imperial Guard in front of the palace and be given the title of Imperial Guard. He glanced at the history of Song on the table and suddenly said, "Currently, the sect of Flame is very powerful in Jishi. They call themselves the Ming sect. They have the sect master, Fang La, and the Dharma kings, Wang Yin, Deng Yuanjue, Shi Bao, and Si Xing Fang. The Ming sect calls itself a martial arts world sect. They spread the teachings of the Manichaeism. It is illegal to gather people. Emissaries like Li Tianrun, Pang Wanchun, Lu Shibua, and Fang Jie have contacted people from all over the world. They have been practicing martial arts day and night in the secluded valley of their headquarters in Mu Province. They are plotting against the law. Chen Ong smiled and said, "The Imperial Guard is here precisely for this purpose, to purge the underworld and the martial arts world, and to restore peace to the Song dynasty. Naturally, the Imperial Guard will clean up these monsters and monsters." "Good. Perfected cultivator, I will have to trouble you." Zhao Su's face lit up. He said with a smile, "The Northwest Border Military is being reorganized. The Western Xia Army can no longer hold back. This time, with perfected cultivator's help, the Western Xia Army will not be able to return. With the prestige of victory, I will do my best to push for the martial suppression order to be passed in the Imperial Court. I will let perfected cultivator do things without any worries." In history, Zhao Su had sent troops to suppress Western Xia many times, forcing Western Xia to beg for peace with the Song dynasty. Now that he had read the history of the Song dynasty and saw this impressive martial arts, he was obviously very proud of it. It also strengthened his confidence in suppressing Western Xia. At this time, Western Xia was weak and the Great Song was strong. The initiative had long been reversed. If the Song army could not gain some advantages, it would be incomprehensible. Huang Chang looked conflicted as he walked out of the Pavilion of Virtuous Talents with Chen Ong. He hesitated a few times and finally couldn't help but ask, "Scholar Chen, what is the meaning of this? I am a member of the Hanlin Academy. How can I be someone who leads troops into battle?" "That is your fate," Chen Ong said indifferently. He did not explain and instructed him, "When you go back, go to the Forbidden Martial Hall to collect your salary. 2 sets of flying fish robes, 100 refined weapon, black tortoise true technique, and 1 blood orchid pill. In your current state, you are still not a match for the Ming cult's Dharmaraja. You don't have enough time, so you can use medicinal pills to make up for it." Chen Ong did not lie to him. When Fang La rebelled, Emperor Hui ordered Huang Chang to send troops to destroy the Ming cult. Later, Huang Chang's family was killed because of this. At that time, Huang Chang's martial arts had already reached perfection. In one breath, he killed a few Dharmarajas and messengers of the Ming cult. Who knew that among the people he killed, some were disciples of famous sects in the Wulin world. Therefore, their martial uncles, martial brothers, martial sisters, martial aunts, martial aunts, martial aunts, martial fathers, and godmothers all came out. They also invited many martial arts masters from other sects to make things difficult for him. They scolded him for not following the rules of the Wulin world. As a result, his entire family was killed by the Wulin people seeking revenge. The most terrifying thing was that, at the age of 70, Huang Chang led troops to destroy the Ming cult. After his entire family was killed, he lived in seclusion for 40 years to practice martial arts for revenge. At the age of 110, he was invincible in the world. He could be said to be an old man comparable to Zhang Sanfeng. Chen Ong even suspected that Huang Chang was still alive. Perhaps when the 5 ultimate swordplay of the Condor shooting technique was held, he was still watching from the side, watching the juniors fight to the death for the martial art he had created. After all, it was only a short 16 years from the time he left the 9-yin manual to the first sword tournament of Mount Hua. 10 days later, the Minister of Revenue, Kai Jing, was found dead in his study. For a while, the court was shocked. According to the investigation of the experts in the court, Kai Jing's sternum was broken and he died in the hands of the beggar clan's dragon subduing palm. Zhezong was furious and ordered the imperial guards to investigate. He also proposed the 36 martial arts ban. The court was in an uproar. Supporters and opponents argued. But because it was limited to the court, it was not known by the Wulin people. At this time, the Wulin people were still in an uproar because many famous experts had died under Gusu's Murong family. The relatives and friends of these famous experts were all demanding justice for them. Chen Ong led dozens of riders as they galloped on the official road. The trees around them flashed by quickly, and in just a few hours, they arrived at a high mound. Chen Ong had brought experts with him, but horses were not made of iron, so they needed to rest. There was no village or inn here. It was also very far from the relay station. Chen Ong let his horse rest. He sat in the shade of a tree to replenish his food and water. Huang Shang's internal energy was profound and he was more spirited than the others. At this time, he had already adapted to his status. Although changing from a civil official to a military official seemed to be a bit demeaning, his status as the Zhuangyuan scholar was still there, so no one would look down on him. In the court, he had always been treated as a civil official. Commander-in-Chief, there seems to be someone in front. A knight in red reported from the side. There was no need for him to say anything. Huang Chang had already discovered a small black dot on the horizon. It was as fast as a galloping horse. From afar, he could see the shiny bald head of the approaching person. He saw an 8-foot-tall monk carrying an iron monk staff and carrying an old man on his back. He was running over here. With just a few leaps, he quickly approached. With large strides, he was even faster than a healthy horse. However, his face was dark and his breathing was heavy. Although he was not sweating at all, it was obvious that he had used up a lot of energy. From afar, he saw the healthy horse that Chen Ong had tied to a tree. The monk's eyes lit up and he sped up. With one step, he covered a distance of 30 feet. However, with the old man on his back, he was as stable as flat ground. "Get out of the way, get out of the way. I will borrow your horse." The monk waved his monk's staff, creating a strong gust of wind. With a shake of his shoulder, he lifted the old man onto the horse's back. He waved his hand and threw out a few pieces of silver. He said, "I am Deng Yuanjue of the Ming cult. I want to buy your horse, but I don't have enough money. Come back and find me. I will definitely make it up to you." "How dare you?" Two of the imperial court experts could not hold back and rushed forward. "Leave the horse." One of the experts waved his hand and a strong gust of wind pressed down. It was powerful and awe-inspiring. The gust of wind could easily split a mountain. But Deng Yuanjue angrily shouted, "Saving people is like fighting a fire. Get out of the way." The monk's staff in his right hand struck out like a madman. The two imperial court experts turned pale with fright and quickly withdrew their palms. Although Deng Yuanjue did not have the intention to kill, just the gust of wind from the monk's staff made it difficult for them to breathe. For a moment their breathing became chaotic and they fell to the ground. Chapter 54. Deng Yuanjue, the Buddha of Jewels, waved his Buddhist staff like an azure dragon. It was very powerful and had the strength of tens of thousands of jin. A graze would kill and a touch would injure. If he didn't have no killing intent, the two imperial court experts would have had their skulls smashed by him. Deng Yuanjue looked at Chen Ang's group and coldly snorted. He heavily stabbed his Buddhist staff into the ground. The gravel on the official road was trampled hard by the horses, but it was like tofu. The Buddhist staff stabbed a foot deep into the ground. If he didn't have a high-level internal Xian technique, he wouldn't have been able to do this. The few of you are behaving suspiciously and all of you seem to be up to no good. I want to ask you, what business do you have in Mu province? Deng Yuanjue had tested the martial arts of the two imperial court experts. Although they were not as good as him, they were still first-class experts in Jianghu. Muzhou was the Ming cult's headquarters. When he saw that Chen Ang's group had extraordinary martial arts, he instinctively became vigilant. Huang Chang coldly snorted. It was clear that he didn't like Deng Yuanjue's demarcation of territory. He bluntly said, "I didn't know that Muzhou had a small imperial court. Everywhere under the heavens belongs to the great Song dynasty. We can come and go as we please. Why do we need to report to you? Are you an official or an imperial court?" When Deng Yuanjue heard this, his leopard eyes widened. He angrily shouted, "Good! So you are a dog of the imperial court. Eat my staff first." As he said this, he pulled out his Buddhist staff and shook it in the air. The gravel on the head of the staff shot out and hit the trees, causing leaves to fall. Wherever the staff moved, there was a thunderous explosion. At this time, the old man on the horse suddenly coughed violently. His face turned purple and he struggled to breathe. His thin and hunched body trembled, and his white hair hung weakly on his face. When Deng Yuanjue heard the old man's pained voice, he immediately froze. He hesitantly put down the Buddhist staff in his hand. He didn't care that Huang Chang was still at the side. He casually placed the Buddhist staff next to him and carefully helped the old man up. His ferocious face was now very gentle as he gently wiped the saliva off the corner of the old man's mouth. Huang Chang had already circulated his inner strength to his palms. Seeing this, he couldn't help but relax. He calmly walked to the side with his back facing Deng Yuanjue. He was not going to take advantage of him. One of them focused on taking care of the old man while the other ignored the other. They were both magnanimous people. Deng Yuanjue spared no effort to use his internal energy to calm the old man's breathing. After doing this several times, the old man's complexion finally improved. Seeing that the old man's breathing had calmed down a little, Deng Yuanjue quickly raised his staff and said to Huang Chang, "I still have something to do, so consider it my loss this time. Looking at your conduct, you can be considered a magnanimous man. Go ahead, the Ming cult will not make things difficult for you. Why would I need you to give in to me?" Huang Chang flicked his sleeve and said, "My actions are my own cultivation. What does it have to do with others? What does it have to do with you? When we meet again, it will still be a battle to the death. Your words are truly an insult to me." Deng Yuanjue didn't say anything. He was about to run away with the old man on his back when Huang Chang called out to him, "Take the horse over. This old man is suffering from the heat. I can't just ignore him. Also, here are some medicine to ward off the heat. Take them quickly." Huang Chang saw his hesitation and sneered, "Do you think I am showing kindness to you? No, every citizen of the Great Song is like a parent to me. You have your filial piety, but I also have my responsibilities. When we meet in the future, I will be the first to cut off your head, you traitor." Deng Yuanjue was furious when he heard this. What a good dog of the imperial court. It's hard to say who will cut off whose head. My Buddhist commandment blade has long been sharpened. If it weren't for the sins of the imperial court, forcing the salt farmers to boil salt every 3 days of the great heat, how could this old man be suffering from the heat? I've already cut off that salt official's head. I won't leave you out. He caught the medicine bottle that Huang Chang threw at him and sniffed it before applying it to the old man's nostrils. Huang Chang's face turned red with anger when he heard Deng Yuanjue's scolding. He had heard of the evil officials of the imperial court. Even though he was angered by Deng Yuanjue's act of killing an official and rebelling, he still suppressed his dissatisfaction. Deng Yuanjue was able to expend so much energy for an old man he didn't know. He carried the old man on his back for 100 li in the hottest days of the great heat, and even killed an official and rebelled. He was clearly a hero. If Qiao Feng saw this, he would probably pull him over to drink 3 jugs of wine. But to a scholar like Huang Chang, he felt extremely conflicted. On one hand, he admired their heroism, but on the other hand, he was angry that they had no respect for the law. In Chen Eng's heart, he didn't care about the law at all. He had a good impression of Deng Yuanjue, this hero of the marketplace. He cleared an empty space, took off his cloak, and spread it on the ground. He said to Deng Yuanjue, "I am a doctor. Help the old man over." Deng Yuanjue saw the box at his waist and the densely packed silver needles. His heart was a little more convinced, and he openly helped the old man over. The old man's forehead was covered with sweat and his body was trembling. Chen Ong took his pulse and found that the old man's body was already in a deficit. His essence had been greatly depleted, and he was only hanging on by a little bit of Deng Yuanjue's internal energy. Luckily, you didn't die. If you didn't help him over, he would have died before we reached Mu province. Chen Ong picked up a silver needle and inserted it into the top of the old man's head. His left hand was like playing the pipa, twisting, flicking, brushing, and stabbing. It was so fast that it turned into a shadow and brushed past the silver needle. A blazing hot air was forced out and turned into a white mist that slowly rose from the top of the old man's head. Chen Ang's right hand didn't stop. He used his internal energy to press on the old man's many acupuncture points. The gentle qi from the golden chamber key theory harmonized yin and yang, and calmed the old man's qi. The old man felt the stuffiness in his chest dissipate. He breathed out a mouthful of hot air, and his whole body felt warm and comfortable. The stuffiness and heat that he had been feeling for the past few days had disappeared. He relaxed and fell into a deep sleep. Deng Yuanjue let out a sigh of relief. His body swayed twice, and it was obvious that he had consumed too much energy. He forced himself to stay awake and secretly complained. The martial arts of the two people in front of him were mysterious and unfathomable. They were both his greatest enemies. When he was at his peak, he still had to be careful. Now that his essence was exhausted, wouldn't he be like a sheep walking into a tiger's mouth? It didn't matter if he lost one of his men, but these two people came with ill intentions. The brothers of the cult were unprepared, and it was very bad. At this moment, a whistling sound was heard from afar. A man in coarse clothes, holding a treasured knife, was riding a fine horse and galloping over. Seeing that there were people here from afar, the man reined in his horse and looked into the distance. He shouted, "Is that the big monk Deng Yuanjue? Baoguang Fuang?" Deng Yuanjue heard the man's call and was overjoyed. He shouted, "Nanli Fuang, I'm here." His dantian was full of qi, and his voice was as loud as thunder. He used the secret technique of the Ming cult to transmit his voice into Shebao's ears. "Monk Deng, don't worry. I'm coming." Shebao gave a loud shout, slapped his horse, and leaped into the air. Chen Ong watched as Shebao leaped like a leopard, and with a few leaps and bounds, he was standing next to Deng Yuanjue, steel saber in hand, on guard against Chen Ong and the others. He was completely different from Deng Yuanjue, and the hostility in his eyes was even stronger. Although he was wearing coarse clothes, it was obvious that he was wearing fine silk undergarments, which was completely different from Deng Yuanjue's sackcloth style. When he glanced at the old man lying on the ground, he could not conceal the arrogance of a martial artist. "Who are you? How dare you come to the territory of the Ming cult without reporting?" Shebao swept his gaze across Chen Ong and the others and sneered. This was the behavior of a local tyrant. Not only did the dragon stallion guards look at him coldly, even Deng Yuanjue frowned. He put his palms together and said in a friendly voice, "Shi Fuang, let's go over and talk." He signaled for Shebao to leave. Shebao's face was gloomy. He did not want to embarrass Deng Yuanjue, so he just glared at Chen Ong and the others, then turned around to leave. He laughed and boasted to Deng Yuanjue, "Well done, Fuang Baoguang and Chun and ha! Killing this thief with your own hands is truly satisfying. Killing those damn dog officials is a good brother of our Ming cult." He laughed to the sky, extremely pleased with himself. Deng Yuanjue, on the other hand, had a bad feeling and his expression changed. Sure enough, a clear voice came from behind them. "Who gave you the courage to do so?" With his hands behind his back, Chen Ong leisurely walked out from in front of them. He smiled and said, "I am the governor of the Great Song, the commander of the Imperial Guard of the Front Palace. I would like to ask everyone, why are you seeking your own deaths when you are living well?" Shebao snorted coldly, holding his saber diagonally. His pair of sinister eyes stared at Chen Ong in bewilderment. Chen Ang's way of appearing was too strange. His voice was clearly behind his ear, but now, he appeared in front of him. Chen Ong stood there with his hands behind his back. His breath was as one. Under the lock of Shi Bao's saber, he could not find any flaw in Chen Ong. Chen Ong stood there, as natural as the breeze and the moon. Under the lock of his murderous intent, he was like a void. He was obviously there, but no one could sense any unusual breath. Deng Yuanjue could not help but feel a chill down his spine. He thought he had already overestimated this young man, but he did not expect that not only did he not overestimate him, but he had also underestimated his terror. Now that the arrow was on the bow, he could only brace himself and say, "The road is open to the sky, let's go our separate ways. We, the Ming cult and the government, mind our own business. Please make way." Chen Ong glanced at him indifferently and said indifferently, "That's right. What ability does the Ming cult have to mind our own business with the government? In other words, what right do you have to make me worry? The land of the Song dynasty and the people of the Han dynasty, when did the Ming cult have the right to make decisions?" He glanced at the mark of Venerable Ming on Deng Yuanjue and Shi Bao, and said coldly, "In the land of the Song, the law is the only rule, and the government is the only law. The Ming cult is arrogant and rebellious, claiming to be venerable and replacing the law with teaching. Today, the Imperial Guard of the Imperial Palace, in accordance with the law, will ban the cult and investigate the wrongdoings. With the vast power of the heavens, cleanse the turbid." Chen Ong smiled inexplicably. Looking at the two people who were on guard, he said indifferently, "Killing officials to rebel and declaring independence is nothing more than feeling that the imperial court is weak. The officials are submissive and want to keep the peace. Now we are here." Chapter 55. A cool breeze blew past and the green leaves on the branches rustled. As if they were infected by this atmosphere, the crisp leaves left the branches and sprinkled down. Deng Yuanjue was on high alert. Beads of sweat seeped out of his forehead and the energy in his body condensed. He gripped the steel staff in his hand, and there was a rare wetness in his palm. In his life, he had fought hundreds of life and death battles, but not once could he compare to this young man standing there in such a simple manner. He could feel the aura gradually condensing on Chen Ang's body. It was like a rising sun, glorious and vast. It swallowed the clouds for tens of thousands of miles and dyed the mountains and rivers red. As it slowly grew, it gave him a nearly suffocating pressure. Deng Yuanjue had always been waiting for the moment when Chen Ang's aura would weaken. He would rather face the next attack that would inevitably shake the heavens and earth than face the vigorous and vigorous Chen Ong. He would rather face the constantly burning and stirring aura in battle. But this time, he had miscalculated. Chen Ong was simply standing there, but his aura had already connected with his surroundings. The wind, the trees, the falling leaves, they were all a part of him. They carried his will and aura, wearing down his fighting spirit. Shi Bao struggled to lift the borrowed saber. The beads of sweat on his forehead blurred his vision. Facing Chen Ong, he didn't dare to wipe it off. He had raised his inner strength for too long, causing his meridians to faintly ache. The two of them understood that no matter what their chances of victory were, they had to attack in the next moment. Otherwise, they would never have another chance. They had to wait for the moment when Chen Ang's aura weakened. Even if they died, they might not be able to wait that long. "Revered Ming, bless me, I will subdue the evil and eliminate the traitor." Deng Yuanjue let out a low roar. A Buddhist staff that weighed more than 100 pounds was lifted up by him like a piece of paper. Madness, stupidity, anger. Deng Yuanjue, who was always calm and collected, was acting like a mad demon at this moment. The Buddhist staff in his hand was like a flood dragon coming out of the sea, twisting and swaying. Under the layers of illusions, there was an abundant strength of 1,000 pounds. It was enlightenment and transcendence. Deng Yuanjue acted crazily. He swung his staff at the sky, vividly displaying his madness. His staff techniques were earth-shattering, but his face was peaceful and happy. His eyes were half-closed, revealing transcendent wisdom and enlightenment. The staff technique is crazy, my heart is like Buddha. The crazier he was, the more detached he was. Only when madness is exhausted can wisdom be born. Chen Ong laughed to his heart's content. With one step, he stepped into the midst of the heavy shadows of the staff, entering a path of life from a dead end. Even though he was on the verge of collapse, no matter how crazed Deng Yuanjue was, the staff was always a hair's breadth away from Chen Ang's vital points. I didn't expect Great Master to be a Shaolin disciple. Chen Ang's hand cut through the heavy shadows of the staff and pressed on Deng Yuanjue's staff. It was like Mount Tai had taken root. No matter how the iron staff moved or how much strength was generated, it could not escape from Chen Ang's palm. Deng Yuanjue's forehead was covered with a thin layer of sweat. His monk's robe was half untied, revealing the muscles and bones on his chest. His expression was solemn and his power awe-inspiring. This was the essence of the crazy demon staff technique, the Luohan exorcism. The Shaolin Temple had been passed down for 1,000 years. In terms of the crazy demon staff technique, how could there be anyone who could surpass Deng Yuanjue? I have received Shaolin's kindness, but our paths are different. How can I endure it? I also don't want to learn from that Buddha's enlightenment and Bodhisattva's compassion. I don't want to suffer from that bird's anger. I might as well learn from that Vajra's angry eyes and overturn the world's unfairness with one strike of the staff. Deng Yuanjue let out a long laugh and said, I'll kick down the golden Buddha and tear down the temple. I'll come down the mountain to live happily with my brothers and overturn the world's unfairness. He shouted loudly with a heroic expression. It was as if he had thrown life and death to the back of his mind. His staff technique became even more wild. In the midst of Chen Ang's palm, he dashed left and right, overturning the five-finger mountain. His iron staff was like a green dragon swinging its tail. With a clear shadow, it struck straight at Chen Ang's face. Good move. Chen Ong was in high spirit. When he saw this unparalleled strike, he was not shocked, but happy. He rubbed his two fingers slightly, and a bit of the inner force from the synopsis of Golden Chamber quietly touched the metal staff. Deng Yuanjue was surprised to find that the metal staff, which was filled with his thick inner force, suddenly trembled. The feeling of being able to control his arm disappeared without a trace. A kind of chaotic and complicated internal energy aura disturbed the chi of the iron staff. It caused the rhythm of Deng Yuanjue's attack to suddenly stagnate, revealing an opening that should not have been there. Chen Ong lightly touched the staff. His graceful finger passed through the layers of internal energy on Deng Yuanjue's chest and touched his chest. This light touch was withdrawn as soon as it touched. Deng Yuanjue only felt a chill on his chest. Chen Ong had already retreated. Shi Bao, who was in a stalemate with Huang Chang on the side, saw this opportunity. With a roar, the long saber in his hand suddenly expanded. It swept across the distance of dozens of feet and directly slashed at Chen Ang's neck. He did not dare to directly face Chen Ang's blade, but he did not mind taking advantage of the opportunity. After Chen Ang's aura calmed down, his surging aura receded like the tide. For someone as intelligent as Deng Yuanjue, he could naturally sense the aura behind Chen Ong that was as deep as the ocean. But for someone like Shi Bao, he could only see the ripples of the tide on the surface. He did not understand that for the ocean, after the tide receded, there would be a huge wave that would shock the heavens. Chen Ong withdrew his hand. His two arms moved in an arc, sealing the long saber between his two arms. The saber light was so powerful that it could not move. Only then did Shi Bao realize the power. He wanted to withdraw, but he felt that the long saber in his right hand was being ground by two energies. He could not pull it out for a moment. In his hesitation, he missed the best opportunity to abandon the saber and retreat. It was still the same ordinary finger. Shi Bao was taken aback. He felt that none of his limbs and bones were cooperating well. His eyes couldn't tell the direction, and his ears heard the wrong sound of the wind. His entire body was twisted, as if all the organs in his body had been turned upside down. When the finger touched his body, he felt a chill run down his spine. Only then did Bao realize that what he had seen and thought were all an illusion. The real finger had reversed yin and yang and messed up the 5 elements. It was not part of common sense. Even with his cultivation in martial arts, he could not figure out this logic. He only felt that if he were to face this move again, he still would not be able to escape. In fact, there was nothing magical about it. Chen Ong had only messed up Bao's aura. The human body's meridians and blood not only followed the great way of yin and yang, but the aura also connected with the human body's yin and yang. This reversed finger technique messed up yin and yang. It was the best way to disturb people's senses. If the 5 senses were not coordinated enough, and the 6 senses were not smart enough, they would easily fall into the trap. Bao was also a man with refined external martial arts. When he bragged and made bets, he had broken a few steel sabers on his body. He circulated his qi under his skin and stirred up his inner qi. Even if a big hammer hit him, he would not be seriously injured. However, when Chen Ong touched him, his muscles and bones instantly twisted together. He screamed and lay on the ground, twitching. Like a steel wire that was twisted into a tight knot, a part of his knotted muscles was torn, so Bao did not dare to move casually. When he stopped, the yin and yang aura in his body suddenly began to mess up. An inverted inner qi messed up his aura. Under the attack from both inside and outside, Bao's eyes rolled back and he passed out. Deng Yuanjue struggled to stand up. Leaning on his iron staff, he looked at Chen Ong with a complicated expression. He had achieved success in Xian Qi. Chen Ang's finger just now had only leaked his essence qi, causing his energy to suddenly dry up and his body to go limp. In just a few breaths, Deng Yuanjue relied on Xian Qi to recover a bit of strength. But he could only barely move. He was not a match for anyone here. The most frightening thing about the martial art of synopsis of the Golden Chamber was its strange and ever-changing aura. Often, within a single move, one would be rendered completely defenseless. If Chen Ong were to unleash his full power, just by relying on the yin and yang qi that was moving back and forth within 10 feet, and the unpredictable force of his finger, those who did not have 80% of his power would not be able to withstand a single finger of his. Deng Yuanjue also understood this principle. He calmly said, "I am powerless. If you want to kill me or torture me, do as you please. But if you want to get a single word out of my mouth, then you're dreaming." With that said, he closed his eyes and calmly accepted death. "Big monk, don't panic. I still have something to trouble you with." Chen Ang's gaze fell on Bao, who was like a dead dog. He smiled and said, "Please pass a message to Fong La and sect leader Fong." Deng Yuanjue lowered his eyes, but his expression did not change. He said slowly, "If it's to persuade them to surrender, then please don't say anything else. If it's anything else, I won't let you down. I'll personally pass the message to sect leader. Please tell him that I'm coming." Chen Ong let out a long laugh. After leaving this short sentence, he led the crowd, the horse, and the patient and disappeared into the horizon. Only Deng Yuanjue was left propping himself up on the ground. Bao, the Nanli Dharma king, was lying limply on the ground like a dead dog. Deng Yuanjue helped him up. The message that Chen Ong left behind was obviously not just a message. It also included the person on the ground. Only when the two of them were put together could it be a complete message. "I'm here. Are you ready?" And Bao was the card that recorded this message. It represented the imperial court, using a Dharma king to indicate its existence in this land. It represented Chen Ong, using his martial arts to invite Fong La. An invitation to a duel. Coincidentally, it was a good time for a duel with the ruler. It was a battle of life and death. Chapter 56. In Sacred Flame Cave Ming Cult's headquarters, Cult Master Fong La's expression was solemn. He stood under the moon with his hands behind his back. The night wind was cool and the moonlight was blurry. It was supposed to be a beautiful night, but the heaviness in Fong La's heart was not something that the bright moonlight could bear. A beautiful woman followed him quietly and draped a coat over him. She said softly, "The night is cold. How could you be so careless? Why? Are you still upset about Shi Fuang and Monk Deng?" Fong La held the woman's hand. There was an indescribable heaviness between his brows. He said slowly, "I feel very uneasy this time. Do you know how many people in this world can defeat the combined might of 2 guardian kings?" The woman frowned and continued, "The 2 guardian kings are both peerless geniuses. There aren't many people in this world who can defeat them. If the 2 of them join forces, the number of people who can defeat them in this world can be counted on one hand. If you count, there must be one from Shaolin Temple, the old witch from Western Xia, Qiao Feng from the Beggar Sect, and me. Even if there are hidden masters, there won't be more than 10 people." Fong La sighed. "It would be great if there were only these masters. But Shi Bao's injury, what's wrong? Didn't you say that Nanli Fuang was only seriously injured?" The woman was surprised. Fong La thought for a while and finally let out a sigh of relief. He said, "I won't hide it from you anymore. Shi Bao's injury is not ordinary. It's a living martial art manual. That person's methods are unpredictable. He hid a supreme martial art manual in Shi Bao's injury. It's terrifying, and respectable." He emphasized the word respectable 3 times, showing that he was not calm at all. "What?" The woman was shocked. "How could such a thing happen in this world? If I hadn't cultivated the heaven and earth great shift to the highest level, the 6th level, I wouldn't have been able to understand this. That person must have calculated my heaven and earth great shift and used Shi Bao to give me this gift," Fong La said solemnly. "But how did he do it?" The woman's back was facing Fong La. Her lowered eyes revealed a hint of indecipherable emotion. Fong La, who did not notice it, explained. "The main idea of my heaven and earth great shift is to reverse the 2 qis of heaven and earth, one hard and one soft, one yin and one yang. As the saying goes, follow life and oppose death. I will reverse it, and it is the number 1 method in the world to circulate strength. Wherever the will of my body goes, my strength goes. Regardless of which sect or clan they are from, they can all be used. After practicing for a long time, one would be able to master all the methods of circulating energy in the world with just a glance. It could be said to be the general outline of circulating energy in the world. My Ming cult's members have a complicated history. Most of them entered the sect with their own skills. If not for this set of martial arts general principles, how would the previous cult masters be able to give pointers to the guardian kings?" The woman's mouth slightly opened. Her eyes flickered and revealed a hint of greed. She pretended to be gentle and said, "The martial art passed down by revered Ming is indeed marvelous. Why did the previous cult masters always fail to break through the 7th layer of this martial art passed down by the Persian cult? Did they do something?" "The Persian headquarters," Fong La sneered. "You think too highly of them. The martial art of the Central Plains is marvelous. How could the Persian headquarters create it? This divine skill was secretly passed down by the first cult master. It has absolutely nothing to do with the Persian headquarters. On the contrary, they even tried to demand this martial art from the divine cult. They didn't even hesitate to use the holy flame insignia to exchange for it. The relationship between our Ming cult and the Persian headquarters is stiff. The headquarters is a group of ambitious wolves who want to control the Ming cult." Fong La clasped her hands behind her back and said with an awe-inspiring manner, "As for the previous cult masters, they were unable to master the 7th layer of the heaven and earth great shift because the divine skill was incomplete. The strange person who created this divine skill did not manage to cultivate his internal energy to the realm of yin and yang complementing each other. Therefore, he speculated that the seventh layer was just a castle in the air. Only when the extreme yin gave birth to the yang, and the extreme yang gave birth to the yin, and the yin and yang complemented each other could it be achieved. The previous cult masters left a message saying that unless one has a peerless divine skill that can harmonize yin and yang as one cannot attempt to break through the seventh layer of the heaven and earth great shift. I originally thought that this supreme realm was just empty talk, but I didn't expect what? The woman asked anxiously. Fang La, who was in an agitated state of mind, did not notice the woman's loss of composure. She murmured in a daze, "I didn't expect that the lifelong wish of the previous cult masters would be delivered to us by a great enemy of the Ming cult. Is this a joke of fate? Or—" At this point, Fang La could not go on. The woman reminded her, "Is it related to Shi Fuang's injury?" Hearing this, Fang La closed her eyes and nodded. "That's right. That man is the most arrogant and frightening person I've ever met. What's frightening about him is not his martial arts, but his heroic spirit to fight against heaven and earth, and his confidence to look down on everything. He hid the way of yin and yang in a force inside Shi Bao's body, reversing yin and yang, mixing water and fire. The way of yin and yang is in itself a peerless martial art, and it is a martial art that complements the heaven and earth great shift. If I can resolve this force, it will be like he taught me this divine technique face to face." Fang La sighed and said, "Although we are enemies, I have to admit that I admire his broad-mindedness and heroic spirit. In comparison, the rule that only the cult master can practice the heaven and earth great shift seems to be pedantic. Who in this world would dare to teach their mortal enemy everything, and who would have the heroic spirit to fight at the peak?" He looked up at the moon and laughed loudly. "If I'm powerless, it will be a great fortune to die in the hands of such a hero. Roji, if I lose miserably and die, you must publicize this battle for me. Everyone in the world must not forget that there were two heroes fighting at the peak of the sacred flame. You must let everyone in the world know that I died a worthy death." "Cult Master, why do you say that?" The woman's expression changed and she said worriedly, "This battle hasn't even started. Why did Cult Master say that you will lose? This is not the Cult Master in my eyes." "Ah, that's right, I'm the Cult Master. How can I say that I will lose so easily? In a while, I will go into seclusion with Monk Deng. I won't come out until I reach the 7th level." Fang La laughed loudly, and his aura was awe-inspiring and inviolable. The woman's eyes revealed a hint of hidden joy. She asked softly, "What if that person suddenly attacks us?" "He won't," Fang La said with a smile. "How can such a person do such a despicable thing? He will definitely wait for me to come out of seclusion and fight with all his strength. He will have no regrets. The next night of the full moon will be the battle between me and the cult master of the Ming clan." On the other side, Chen Ong looked up at the boundless moon and said to Huang Chang with a smile. They lived in a small courtyard of the local magistrate. Chen Ong read and wrote books every day. He didn't look nervous at all. He would often discuss Taoism with Huang Chang and discuss the true essence of martial art. Huang Chang himself was changing rapidly. He learned a lot of knowledge from Chen Ong that he had never learned before. Not only were there exquisite martial arts, but he also learned about astronomy, geography, ancient characters, farming and weaving, zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Huang Chang learned many things that he had never heard of or seen before. It was an eye-opener for him, and he gained a lot. It was no less than a rebirth. In particular, Chen Eng's synopsis of the Golden Chamber was the most exquisite medical and martial arts that Huang Chang had ever seen. The scholar's scholarship is really impressive. Huang Chang stroked the light yellow cover of the synopsis of the Golden Chamber and sighed. Ever since I read this book, I've changed the manuscript 3 times, added and reorganized many times. Now that I think about it, revising what I've learned like this is the way of learning. Chen Ong smiled. You can also write a book and record what you have learned so that it can be passed down to the later generations. If I write a book like that, I'm afraid I'll just be making a fool of myself and make a fool of myself. My knowledge has not surpassed what the predecessors have written. Why would I need to write a book? Huang Chang laughed at himself. If I write it, it will only be a synopsis of the longevity Taoist canon. Maybe when I have mastered what the scholar has taught me, this day will come. The synopsis of the longevity Taoist canon is interesting. Why don't you write a martial arts version? Let's call it the 9-yin manual. Chen Ong suddenly shook his head and laughed. The way of heaven is to take away the surpluses and make up for the deficiencies. Therefore, what is empty wins over what is real. If you write this book, I must write a preface for it. Why would the scholar say that? Huang Chang was surprised. This martial arts synopsis is not profound enough, and it is not extensive enough. It is just my own ravings. There is no end to learning. I only want to be careful and focus on research. Why should I be distracted by martial arts? You are the imperial capital of the martial prohibition palace. Do you think you can escape from the affairs of the Jianghu? Chen Ong smiled and said, Let's not talk about other things first. Go back and sort out the inner palace martial arts library. Make comments on the martial arts in the library, make corrections, and write a book called Outline of Inner Palace Martial Arts. As for the 9-yin manual, when you have the heart to write it, you can write it again. Although Huang Chang was a little unwilling, he still agreed. Chen Ong looked at his scholarly demeanor and sighed to himself. If not for that vengeance, where would Huang Chang have ended up? Without the loftiness and ruthlessness, would there still be a second volume of the 9-yin manual? What Huang Chang had learned had long since surpassed the scope of the 10,000 life scripture. After going through the baptism of martial arts in the armory, his accumulation of martial arts could be said to be very deep. All he lacked was 40 years of isolation and specialization. Chapter 57. That night it rained heavily. Under the dim light of dusk, only the sound of water pouring could be heard. From the front to the horizon, in the vast wilderness, everything fell in pieces in the rain, broken, and gathered into a turbid stream. A black boot stepped on the turbid stream, splashing water everywhere. Looking up, a man in a straw cape and bamboo hat looked coldly at the rugged mountain road in front of him. His qigong was extremely extraordinary. Even in such bad weather, he was still able to freely jump between the cliffs and boulders. The slippery stone walls were trampled by him, leaving shallow holes in them. He was like an antelope, traversing the steep mountain road. He looked left and right. A few indistinct figures flashed and disappeared not far away. They were also dressed like him. The man raised his head slightly and looked at the faintly discernible hilltop in the distance in the rain curtain of the night. That was the headquarters of the Ming cult, where the sacred fire cave was located. It was less than 10 miles away from them. In the dark night, dozens of such people were moving forward. A young man in green walked in front of them. He held a light oilpaper umbrella in his hand. However, no matter how violent the rain outside was, it could not squeeze into the small oilpaper umbrella. This green-clothed man had a dry and clean body. The person next to him was not so lucky. Even though he was covered up tightly, Huang Chang's body was still somewhat damp. He raised the bamboo hat on his head and loudly said, "Commander-in-Chief, although it is a full moon night, the weather is so bad. I'm afraid this is not the right time." "That's great. If there is a fight later, we won't have to worry about cleaning the ground." Holding the umbrella, Chen Ong strolled in the heavy rain. He smiled faintly and said, "The rain can cover up many things. Some traces, some things that are about to happen, things that are happening, they are all happening quietly in the rain. Under this heavy rain, something will happen. Some of it will be us, and some of it will be others. The rain is the best cover for evil. Huang Chang frowned. He did not understand what this meant. Suddenly, he noticed an inconspicuous trace of red in the water under his feet. Following the trace of the water, he saw a few Ming cult disciples lying on the side with their bodies twisted. On their pale faces, a pair of eyes were wide open, filled with confusion and confusion. Military governor! Huang Chang exclaimed in shock. A bolt of lightning struck not too far away. As the lightning shone, the faces of those who died with their eyes wide open looked incredibly savage and bizarre. Not too far away, a Ming cult disciple was pierced by a long sword and pinned to a tree. His eyes were fixed in front of him, and there was pain, anger, and a nameless sadness on his face. Such a wound, so fierce, so sharp. Huang Chang went up to check inside. The person wielding the sword does not have a deep inner force, but his sword technique is vicious and sharp, far surpassing that of a normal expert. This kind of style can only be done by an assassin. Not only is she an assassin, she's also a woman. Chen Ong glanced at the sword wound and said faintly, "She is a very beautiful and meticulous woman. She is like makeup, meticulous and subtle. She gave him a sword, which is why there is such a clean wound. It looks like we have run into some interesting things. The rainy night, the murder, the woman, and the duelists who had come knocking on their door caused the waters of Ming cult to become murky before they could even begin to tremble intensely. Some things were quietly fermenting with the arrival of Chen Ong and the others. Chen Ong looked at the brightly lit headquarters of Ming cult and smiled faintly. He was in the middle of a heavy rain, but all the patrolling Ming cult disciples ignored him. He stepped on the puddles of water and entered the headquarters, which was heavily guarded. Wherever he went, the Ming cult disciples' gazes would become slightly dazed, and they would be easily controlled by the people in the woven rush raincoats. Without a sound, a large portion of the Ming cult's patrolling system was missing. One by one, the Ming cult disciples fell to the ground and were replaced by the dragon stallion guards dressed in bright red flying fish robes. Just like that, Chen Ong approached the headquarters of Ming cult to discuss matters. Tonight, the place was brightly lit. The flickering candlelight shone through the thick screen window and shone on Chen Ang's body. The sound of an intense argument came from inside. A rough and loud voice roared, "We can't let this matter go like this. We can't. A debt of blood must be repaid with blood. We will rebel. We will rebel against that son of AB*TCH. We will take revenge for Big Brother sure." "Shut up!" Fang La shouted angrily. "Fang Jie, sit down." He looked around at the bustling Ming cult disciples in the hall. When he saw their indignant gazes and how they gripped their weapons tightly, he let out a long sigh and closed his eyes. He listened to his own heartbeat. In the blink of an eye, the room became deathly silent. After a long time, Fang La said bitterly, "Before we get to the bottom of this matter, none of you can jump to conclusions. What else is there that we can't figure out?" Fang Jie couldn't stand it anymore. Ignoring the pulling of the people around him, he jumped out and said, "That dog official injured Shi Fuang. He only lasted a few days before he died. Is the truth still not clear? What we want is revenge. We must seek justice from the imperial court." "What justice?" Fang La sneered. "The imperial court killed a traitor. What justice do you want?" Fang Jie was slightly taken aback. He didn't expect his uncle to say this. His uncle's determination to rebel against the imperial court had always been the strongest. Why was he now acting like a pacifist? He stiffened his neck and said, "Killing that dog official is justice. When the revered Ming descends, the world will be at peace." The great Song dynasty's imperial court went against the grain and provoked the resentment of the people. The world is not at peace. Therefore, according to the teachings, we let the revered Ming descend to the world, so that everyone is equal and can enjoy peace. This is our justice. Fang La turned to look at the crowd and said word by word, "For this justice, everyone risked their lives and threw away their families' lives. Isn't dying in the hands of the imperial court a matter of seeking justice and obtaining it?" This sentence was spoken loudly. "The imperial court wants to kill me in the name of righteousness, but I fight against it under the banner of justice. Isn't it reasonable for us to fight to the death? What's there to complain about? Are we supposed to hope that the imperial court will let us live?" Everyone gripped their long sabers tightly. Their anger turned into determination. "Well said, Cult Master Fang. We're already in a life-or-death relationship. It's normal for us to have casualties. It's ridiculous to talk about justice." A cold voice came from outside the door. "Who's there?" Fang Jie shouted. Pang Wanchun, who was beside him, pulled his 4-pickle iron body bow. A sharp arrow pierced through the air and shot out of the door. The arrow pierced through the door, and the sound of the bowstring was heard. In a flash, a fatal arrow was released. The voice outside the door chuckled. The door creaked. A green figure walked in, holding a refined iron arrow in his hand. Chen Ong smiled and said, "Weren't you waiting for me? You dog official, you still dare to come here. Today, I will avenge Brother Shi." Fang Jie looked at Chen Ong with eyes full of hatred and a deep sense of jealousy. Sometimes, the justice that supported a person was the kind of resentment and jealousy towards injustice. Their hatred towards injustice was not so much the hatred towards injustice itself, but rather the jealousy towards the other side of injustice, and the hatred towards those who benefited from injustice. When they became the ones benefiting from injustice, they would defend this injustice tenfold. Chen Ong sighed slightly. From the perspective of the core members of the Ming cult like Fang Jie, looking at their aspirations and awareness, the Ming cult was only SOSO. He looked at Fang Jie and smiled. He said lazily, "You want to avenge Shi Bao? Then you've got the wrong person. Since I spared his life, why would I go through so much trouble to kill him? I don't care about people like him. Brother Shi was injured by your hand and he couldn't be treated. If it wasn't you, who else could it be?" Fang Jie asked angrily, "Could it be us who did it, you? I'm afraid you've misunderstood me." Chen Ong interrupted indifferently, "Do you think I'm explaining to you? I'm just stating a fact. Whether you believe it or not, what does it have to do with me? That's your choice, and I'm just deciding the outcome of your choice." Chen Ong didn't care about the attitude of the Ming cult people. A mantis trying to stop a chariot, did a chariot need to care about the attitude of a mantis? It only gave a result. He stated a fact, not to change the attitude of others, but because of his habit of being realistic. He was also very realistic about the reactions of others. They were calm, and it had nothing to do with Chen Ong. If they were impulsive, they would be crushed. "How dare you? You're asking for death." The Ming cult people in the hall were angered by Chen Ang's condescending attitude, and they started scolding him. A few of the more hot-tempered cult members were even more restless, and they were about to draw their swords. Fang La glanced at them, and they became obedient. However, there were still people who were unwilling to give up, and they said, "A dog official of the imperial court killed my brother. He deserves to die 1,000 times. We can't let him go." As soon as he said that, many people agreed. Fang La sighed and said, "The imperial court and the Ming cult are like fire and water. You and I are in a life-or-death situation. Today's battle is inevitable. I've already made a conclusion about Shi Bao's death. It's not because of this groundless accusation, but because we stand on different sides." "That's right. I've finally met someone who understands." Chen Ong smiled faintly and said, "Cult leader, please." Chapter 58. The rainwater poured down on the bluestone slabs and hit the green oil paper umbrella, splashing countless tiny water droplets, forming a thin layer of mist that covered Chen Ang's frail figure under the umbrella. A bolt of lightning cut through the sky, and the dazzling electric light illuminated the peak of the sacred fire cave. At the peak, the blurry figure was hidden in the thin mist. In the rolling thunder, Fong La took off his coat, revealing his strong chest. The rain slid down his back, and a few frightening old wounds hovered around his vital parts like centipedes. These hideous wounds caused even Huang Chang's expression to change. Although they had already healed, one could imagine just how frightening and dangerous they had been just by looking at the terrifying wounds that were close to their vitals. The Ming cult's Dharmarajas stood behind Fong La, letting the rain fall on them. Every one of them was a top-notch master, and they had fought their way through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. It would not be an exaggeration to say that they had been through hundreds of battles. However, they were willing to submit to the man named Fong La. Some of them had amazing aptitude, and had mastered the peerless skills that few people had mastered. Some were born in famous families, and had been practicing martial arts for decades. Some had fought their way up from the bottom, and with their bravery, they gained their strength. However, it was Fong La, an ordinary person from a farmer's family, who intimidated all of them and became the real cult master of the Ming cult. Huang Chang looked at Fong La, who was walking up the high platform, with a solemn expression that had never been seen before. Although he was not involved in Jianghu, when it came to foresight, even the four great Ming cult's Dharmarajas could not compare to him. It was only dozens of steps from the door to the high platform. The water on the flagstones and the raindrops collided with each other, creating countless tiny ripples. If someone stepped on the water, he would definitely feel the softness of the water and the slight splashes when his skin touched the water. Naughty children in the heavy rain loved this feeling. There were also many people who hated this damp feeling. Even if they were careful and meticulous, they could not avoid the splashes on the ground, and the rolling mist would wet their trousers. This kind of trouble was unavoidable. However, Huang Chang discovered that Fong La's trousers were dry. The rainwater dripped down his chest and hit his body forcefully. However, it was as if the rainwater had hit a sponge and was firmly attached to the surface of his skin. Soon, a layer of water film coated his body. When he stepped into the puddle, it was as if he was sinking into the water bit by bit. There was no sound, no ripples, and the rising mist couldn't even get close to his skin. It gathered into water droplets and dripped down again. This was the most wonderful strength. There are some experts in Jianghu who do not have more than 30% of their martial arts skills. They boast about their martial arts skills by not spilling wine when they are in the air, and their sword piercing through the tofu in the palm without injuring the opponent. They should really see Fong La's performance at this moment. Countless tiny, messy, and unpredictable water droplets of different sizes, light or heavy, flew towards Fong La's body like headless flies. Complicated and trivial forces came from different directions, at different speeds, and from different directions. At this moment, the complicated changes of forces could be called the most marvelous hidden weapon in the world. No one could escape from the attack of water in the heavy rain. This was the world's most frightening hidden weapon. It was unpredictable, it was secretive, it was silent, and often unknowingly, it would wet your clothes. If you let the Tang sect's most formidable hidden weapon expert see this rain, would he have the slightest thought of resisting? If the best person in the world with the best skills and the best body movement, could he escape and catch the heavy rain that was everywhere? However, Fong La had done this. He had received all the raindrops that had struck him. Every single bit of force, every single inconspicuous contact, Fong La had neutralized them one by one, diverting their power. He was like a master who borrowed the force to fight against countless attacks at the same time. The Heaven and Earth Great Shift. This was the real Heaven and Earth Great Shift. It was the best in controlling the force in the world, and it could be called the peerless martial art master outline of force. In front of it, all the martial arts that paid attention to the exquisite force were like joke. Those complicated martial arts that no one in the world could master, that only one genius appeared in hundreds of years, and that they spent their whole lives to learn and polish, Fong La could be 10 times more proficient than their creators in just one encounter. As for the control of force, There was no martial art in the world that could surpass its scope. With Fang La, the most powerful cult leader in the history of the Ming cult, his attainments in this martial art for decades, and Chen Ang's full guidance, the change of yin and yang, the borrowing force to fight against force, and the shifting of force, he completed its core. That was how it created the peerless martial art that was unprecedented in history. "Congratulations!" Chen Ong said happily. Fang La walked in front of it and sighed. "It was not until just now that I felt the joy of martial arts. I could describe the way of heaven, the unrestrained freedom, and the great liberation. This is the only moment in my life that I can understand the joy of martial arts. When a person does something wholeheartedly, he will be extremely happy. You have to really love this thing to feel its charm," Chen Ong said to him with a smile. Fang La said, "I didn't understand you at first. It was not until I stood here that I realized how rare it is to have an opponent who is on par with me." "It's my luck to have such an opponent," Chen Ong said with a smile. "It's also my luck to see the 8th level of the Heaven and Earth Great Shift. In the Ming cult, when the Heaven and Earth Great Shift was only at the 6th level, it was already a rare divine martial art in the world. The cult leaders of the past could only reach the 6th level, but they were already the top masters in the martial arts world. This time, with the help of Fang La's decades of accumulation, Chen Ang's supreme wisdom of martial arts, and the essence of the martial arts of the Laughing Ao world and the Celestial Dragon world, were pushed to the 9th level of the Heaven and Earth Great Shift. It must be extremely brilliant and splendid. Chen Ong was looking forward to it. He put down the oil paper umbrella in his hand and stepped into the heavy rain. The raindrops fell on him and slid down without any resistance, creating a curtain of water. Chen Ong stepped on the stone floor and soared into the sky. Like a flood dragon in the clouds, he swam freely in the curtain of rain. The water droplets he sprayed with different strengths and sizes pounced at Fang La. A finger was waiting behind the water droplets. Without any sign of smoke or fire, he pointed at the water droplets freely. Chen Ong flashed through the heavy rain and pointed at Fang La. Countless hidden strengths were hidden in the countless water droplets. Each water droplet could hide a world. At least, that was the case for Chen Ong. The weird strength destroyed the balance of yin and yang and reversed the breath of the human body. That was the sickness natural qi. Those who were injured by the sickness natural qi would be seriously ill. The way of yin and yang could bring the dead back to life, but it could also destroy the vitality. This was no longer a martial art that could hurt people, but a kind of divine medical skill. Fang La folded his palms and turned around. His hands were like a door, blocking the way around him. When the splashing water droplets hit his hands, no matter how strong or how weird the hidden strength was, they were all diverted by a round strength and guided in the direction from which he hit. The water droplets in the air gathered into a palm-sized water ball, floating in the air weirdly. Even if the force of the water ball was complicated and changeable, and Chen Ang's qi force was strange and unpredictable, when it met with the smooth and round force, it reversed the force and sorted out the yin and yang. The marvelousness of the Heaven and Earth Great Shift was brought into full play. The endless force was locked in a small water ball. The heavy rain fell on Fang La's body but slid down powerlessly. Even this little bit of force was stored in the water ball. The force that Chen Ong sent over was collected and gradually accumulated. Fang La smiled and returned his hands. It was like a big lake filled with water when a mountain torrent broke out. The water ball dispersed silently, but the force poured out along with Fang La's great strength, like the dam of a lake had broken and the flood was rushing out. He took Chen Ang's force and sent it out as if the two of them were joining hands. Was there anyone in the world who could withstand the joint attack of Chen Ong and Fang La? Chen Ang's finger followed closely behind, meeting this explosive attack. If it was a direct hit, the finger bones, wrist bones, arm bones, shoulder bones, and ribs would all be broken, the tendons and bones would be crushed, the internal organs would be burnt, and the strange energy would cause the yin and yang qi to be reversed, and all kinds of diseases would occur at the same time. Even if the immortals from heaven came, they would also die miserably. However, it just so happened that it was Chun'ong who had mastered the heaven and earth great shift. There were only two people in the world who could reach the pinnacle. One was Fong La and the other was Chun'ong. The two of them, one on the inside and the other on the outside, had each perfected the profound mysteries of this divine skill. Although Chun'ong had not comprehended half of what Fong La had learned, he knew about half of the mystery of the heaven and earth great shift, because it was a martial art created and deduced by the two of them. Chapter 59. As soon as Fong La used the magic of the heaven and earth great shift, Chun'ong understood a little bit of it. This martial art was not obscure at all in front of him. At this moment, Fong La was like a living secret manual demonstrating all the mysteries of the heaven and earth great shift. Being connected with nature and being an integral part of nature, Chun'ong's finger was like a swan goose treading on snow and mud, leaving no trace. The claw print was still there, but the swan goose had already disappeared. The shadow of the finger could be seen clearly, but his spirit had forgotten everything and was assimilated with the heaven and earth. Fong La's surging force hit the air. Even when his palm and finger met, he only felt that the air in front of him could not bear the force, and the fingers seemed to be illusory. Obviously, there was infinite force, but it hit the void. The void could not bear the force, and emptiness triumphed strength. If the heaven and earth great shift was the pinnacle of application, then this move of Chun'ong's could be said to be the exquisite response of emptiness to reality. Between the two, one had inexhaustible force, and the more he fought, the stronger he became, and the other had no leakage force and no weakness. It was a case of meeting one's match. In the heavy rain, a strange scene was formed. Chun'ong's fingertips seemed to be the void, and the rainwater around him dripped down, forming a funnel-shaped space on his fingertips. Sticking to Chun'ong's body, the rainwater converged into two water dragons that spread down. The rainwater that had been falling down was moving close to his body. Deng Yuanjue and the others were shocked. With their eyesight, they could naturally see that Chun'ong's strength had disappeared without a trace, and he was in a state of emptiness. Even the rainwater in the sky could not touch his strength, and the heaven and earth great shift could not borrow any strength. His wisdom and martial arts could be regarded as peerless. The raindrops that hit Fong La's body seemed to have hit an elastic gel, which changed the direction of the force. The strength of the force bounced, collided, and splashed out on the surface of his skin. The water droplets failed to leave any trace on his skin. Countless tiny forces converged into one and struck at Chun'ong, subduing hardness with softness, suppressing the real with the illusory. Chun'ong had borrowed his origin power's sense of the void and invested his essence, energy, and spirit to counter the real with the illusory. Although it was difficult for him to take the initiative, he was able to deal with the great universal shift with relative ease. Fong La's palm arts were sharp and his moves profound, but there was a sense of emptiness where he couldn't exert force. Every move was filled with great strength, but they all hit empty air. The Dharma kings of the Ming cult all looked solemn. They had overestimated Chun'ong's martial arts, but they did not expect that Chun'ong was 10 times more powerful than they had expected. Fong La had been reborn in just 20 days, and his martial arts had advanced beyond their imagination. But Chun'ong still had the upper hand. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, none of them would have believed such a joke. But they, who had been clamoring for punishment and revenge, were more like a joke. Fong Jie's face was pale, and his face was full of disbelief. He finally understood that if it were not for Fong La, even if there were 10 more people like him, it would only be a matter for Chun'ong to make a move. The revenge and blood feud he had talked about before seemed even more like a joke. Under Chun'ong's suppression, the Ming cult was already in grave danger. They did not even have the power to protect themselves, so how could they pursue the matter? The Ming cult's resistance against the imperial court was based on the martial arts skills of the cult members. Their elites were far superior to the imperial court's army, which was why the local authorities did not dare to act rashly and allowed the Ming cult to carve out a large piece of territory. But it was not until Chun Ong came that they felt the pressure of Mount Tai pressing down on them. The situation had long been reversed. Not to mention the Dharma kings and the emissaries, the lives of the vast number of people at the grassroots level were hanging on Chun Ang's thoughts. One wrong move and Mount Tai crushed an egg, and hundreds of thousands of believers would be destroyed, their families destroyed, and their cult destroyed. Even if they could fight back a little, it would be difficult to change the situation. This was the Ming cult's life and death situation. What Fang Jie had done before was like a newborn jackal challenging a lion. He did not understand that the current situation was not about the Ming cult doing anything to Chun Ong, but how Chun Ong would deal with the Ming cult. Fang La's only hope was to defeat Chun Ong and maintain the only advantage they had over the imperial court. Fang Jie was immersed in Jianghu. The Ming cult's reputation of not going back on its word, and its prestige of killing officials and rebelling, he did not understand that it had always been the weak who gave the strong an explanation. Why did the strong need to explain so much to the weak? That was why he tried to provoke them and was reprimanded by Fang La. The Ming cult's survival depended on Fang La's shoulders. How could Fang Jie and the others feel such a heavy pressure? Fang La was already a little anxious. Even though the heaven and earth great shift was unparalleled, it could not shake Chun Ong at all. He had used all his strength, but he was only on par with him. The Ming cult could not bear such an ending. He reached behind him and took out 2 long and narrow tokens from his waist. When the rainwater hit the tokens, there was a faint flame that changed its color. His body twisted, and his whole body suddenly fell in an incomparably strange posture. The tokens seemed to have turned into a nimble poisonous snake, hissing and hissing. The originally righteous palm technique suddenly turned into a sinister and strange body movement. In Fang La's hand, the tokens were like a ball of twisted light and shadow. Together with the exquisite power, they entangled around Chun Ong layer by layer. The cold and fierce light and shadow were erratic, like a sinister wind or a ghost, strange and unpredictable. This was a strange martial art originating from Persia. It was very different from the common sense of the Central Plains. The divine skill of the Xing Huoling was a sinister and strange attack. Although this martial art was passed down to the Persian cult, it was not in line with the character of the Ming cult's successive cult leaders. Therefore, it was more symbolic than practical. But today, Fang La was forced into a corner by Chun Ong, so he had no choice but to use this martial art that was not in line with his character. But Fang La would never have imagined that Chun Ong was familiar with all the languages in the world. He could even be said to be proficient in the Tadpole Heavenly Script and the Neon Talisman, let alone the Persian language. The martial art of the Xing Huoling was not concealed. As soon as it was taken out, he saw it. With the secret manual as a reference, Chun Ong was able to figure out the Xing Huoling's martial art in just 2 or 3 moves. This kind of unorthodox martial art was the pinnacle of its power. Perhaps he would be at a disadvantage if he encountered a master of the Central Plains who was not familiar with the Persian martial art. But if he encountered Chun Ong, who was also proficient in this martial art, he would be in big trouble. The way of martial art was to restrain the strange. As soon as Fang La's routine was figured out, the situation fell into Chun Ang's control. His palms spread out like 1,000 blooming lotuses. They turned into palm prints that filled the sky and restrained the energy that pervaded the battlefield. The Ming cult's 4 great guardian kings' countenances changed drastically. What appeared in Chun Ang's hands was the Qian Kuan de Noi, which they regarded as their cult's most treasured divine skill. In Chun Ang's hands, this martial art had a completely different transformation. Other than some obvious shadows, It could be regarded as another martial art that was exactly the same as the original one. Fang La steadied his mind and focused all his attention on the battle. He did not think too much about it. He advanced and retreated at the same time. The Sheng Huo Ling in his hands was full of changes, but a force that followed him like a shadow was diverting and neutralizing his strength. Both of their forces were facing each other. It was like two masters of balance who were destroying each other's center of gravity. All of a sudden, the force that Chen Ong had directed was restrained. Like a real force, it struck the void. Fang La was puzzled. He carefully protected his vital part. At the same time, the two forces intertwined and entangled around Chen Ang's body. In the void, it was as if a piece of void had been emptied. Suddenly, a strong suction force burst out and deviated from Fang La's force. Chen Ong waved his hand casually. All kinds of strange force fields were generated in the void. Waves after waves of strange force affected Fang La's senses. Like walking into a trap, Fang La crashed into the force field that Chen Ong had set up. Fang La felt that Chen Ong had already seen through his martial arts style and inner force. In the blink of an eye, he had fallen into Chen Ang's rhythm. His body also became sluggish. An empty force had trapped Fang La. Chen Ong gently pointed his finger at Fang La's body. A complicated force intertwined and sealed his movement. Several waves of strange inner force sealed the major acupoints all over his body. Fang La could not hold on any longer. Even though he had the Qian Kuan de Noa Yi to reverse his acupoints and neutralize the strange inner force, his face turned pale. He staggered a few steps back and leaned against the wall weakly. Sect Master! The Dharmarajas were burning with anxiety. They rushed forward and surrounded Fang La on all three sides, keeping their guard up as they checked on Fang La's injuries. Deng Yuanjue probed Fang La's body with his inner energy, but he felt that Fang La's body was in a mess. His inner energy was out of control and clashed violently. If he was not careful, he would trigger a counterattack from Fang La's inner energy. Deng Yuanjue felt a mysterious inner force rushing toward him. He did not dare to resist, fearing that he would hurt Fang La and aggravate his injury. Therefore, he allowed the force to enter his body and only used his inner force to wear it down. Deng Yuanjue coughed up a mouthful of blood. The remaining Ming cult higher-ups supported Deng Yuanjue's swaying body and shouted anxiously, "Dharmaraja! Monk Deng! I'm fine." After Deng Yuanjue spat out a mouthful of blood, the tightness in his chest dissipated a little. "This is bad." A Ming cult disciple rushed over and hastily said, "The officers and soldiers at the foot of the mountain are attacking us. They know the terrain and the mechanism of the mountain like the back of their hand. There are also people who are providing support in secret. They have already broken into the headquarters." "What?" The people of the Ming cult were shocked. In the distance, there were already flickering lanterns and battle cries. Dozens of men in woven rush raincoats appeared around them and surrounded Chen Ong. The backbone of the flags of 5 elements, the flag master, was tied to one side. In the distance, the officers and soldiers held strong bows and crossbows in their hands. They advanced and retreated in an orderly manner. With the help of the men in woven rush raincoats, the people of the Ming cult were forced to retreat. In front of the Dharmaraja, there was Chen Ong blocking their way. Behind them, there was an army attacking the mountain. They could neither advance nor retreat. They were trapped in a dead end. "It seems that I have won this battle by a small margin." Chen Ong smiled with his hands behind his back. He picked up the oil paper umbrella beside him and held it over his head. Drops of water dripped down and fell into the puddles, making a crisp sound. Fang La struggled to get up. His expression was calm. He said to Chen Ong, "Your Excellency's skills are superior. The outcome of the battle is clear to you. Today, the Ming cult has met with a great calamity. However, the ups and downs of the times are difficult and dangerous. We have already regarded it as normal. The previous cult masters have all died suddenly. The Ming cult has also faced the danger of being wiped out. Life and death are normal for us. As long as the sacred flame is not extinguished, the cult will not perish. Chapter 60. Fang La struggled to stand still. He sighed and said, "But there's one thing I don't understand. I hope you can help me. The sacred fire cave is full of traps and the terrain is rugged and complicated. The Ming cult has been here for many years. How did you get the secrets of this place?" Chen Ong smiled and said indifferently, 10 days ago, someone sent me a secret letter. Not only did it contain many of the Ming cult's secrets, it also contained a map of the terrain and mechanisms. It described the various secret passages and sentry posts of the Ming cult. Is that true? Fang La sighed deeply. He had been calm all this time, but now his hands were trembling. Although that person avoided meeting me, I knew that she was a woman, and a beautiful one at that. The more beautiful a woman is, the better she is at lying. Ha ha! Fang La shook his head and said, "Brother, sure, it's my fault." The Ming cult's Dharmaraja and envoys looked gloomy. Fang Jie murmured, "The saintess, it's the saintess." Their eyes were full of shock and hatred. A painful silence spread among the crowd. They could accept the enemy's killing, but they could not tolerate the betrayal of their own people. "Followers, listen," Fang La said excitedly. "Protect the women and children. Follow me to the Ming cult's palace." Fang La and the followers retreated to the sacred fire altar while protecting the women and children. Chen Ong stood where he was and showed no intention of pursuing them. Huang Shang hesitated for a moment. Seeing that Chen Ong did not respond, he ordered loudly, "Soldiers, listen. Beat the Ming cult followers with stick. Those who don't resist, kneel down. Capture them first. Don't kill too many people." He added, "Dragon Stallion Guards, send a team to put out any fire you see. If you see anyone disturbing the women and children and killing the innocent, kill them immediately." At this moment, the Ming cult's people knew that they had lost the day. The ordinary disciples did not dare to resist the soldiers who were like wolves and tigers. They obediently allowed themselves to be captured. Only a group of core members resisted. However, they were easily knocked to the ground by the Dragon Stallion Guards. Although they cried out in pain, they were not in any life-threatening danger. Under the supervision of the Song Army, they were disciplined. It was rare that there were no disturbances, killings, or arson. They organized the sacred fire cave in an orderly manner. Seeing this, Fang La's eyebrows relaxed a little. He said to Huang Shang, "Your Excellency's kindness has made the Ming cult's living people helpless. I'm deeply grateful." Huang Shang flicked his sleeves and waved his hand. "No need. You have confused the hearts of the people and bewitched them. They have all been implicated by you. The common people are all citizens of the Song dynasty. They are innocent people, but you deserve to die. I am only upholding the benevolence and do not deserve the gratitude of a traitor like you." Fang La was standing under the altar of the Lord of Light's holy fire with a group of core followers. Hearing Huang Cheng's words, he laughed and said, "It's not that I'm deluding people. It's just that people's minds change. The followers here are all poor people, and their lives are worse than that of pigs and dogs. We've risen up to uphold the doctrine of equality. That's why we're as close as brothers. That's the only way we have dignity. The Lord of Light is merciful. Illuminate the world with the sacred fire, and fill the world with light." He struggled to get rid of the support of the crowd and sat down cross-legged. He spread his fingers in front of his chest and made the shape of a soaring flame. The followers of the Ming cult present chanted in unison, "Burn my broken body with the sacred fire. What joy is there in life? What bitterness is there in death? For good and evil, only the light is there. Joy, joy, sorrow, and sorrow all return to dust. Pity the people of our world, they have so many troubles. Pity the people of our world, they have so many troubles." The various guardian kings and disciples all had solemn expressions. They did not fear the destruction of their sect at all. Their awe-inspiring auras intimidated the Song army into not daring to move forward. Chen Ong slowly walked over to them. What spirit and breadth of mind! Unfortunately, the difference in your cultivation is too great. You have the heart to change the world, but you do not have the ability to rebuild mountains and rivers. Even if your sacred fire illuminates the world, you're just another imperial court in the guise of a cult. You're even more vicious and ruthless. Compared to the current Song dynasty, you're nothing. Fang Jie scolded. What do you know, you dog official? Chen Ong was not angry. He said indifferently, I don't see the slightest bit of light and equality in you. Isn't the doctrine of a cult ridiculous if it's like this? Even the ordinary followers have to farm and provide for you. Even the Dharmaraja and banner leaders have silk and satin all over their bodies. Even if they put on a linen coat, they can hide the corruption inside. Deng Yuanjue put his palms together and said, The Lord of Light came to the world to deliver all living things. All living things have a heart of light. They struggle out of the darkness. Only under the sacred fire can the world be at peace. We enjoy light and peace in the cult. We want everyone to be like us. That's the real intention of the Ming cult. You're too narrow-minded. You're too stupid. You can't achieve great things by relying on the gods and Buddhas. You have a heart of darkness, but you only know how to vent your anger. You're too stupid. Chen Ong sighed. It's too high of a compliment to call you revolutionaries. What's a revolution? Fang La asked in a low voice. To change the world, eliminate injustice, and create a new world. That's a revolution. Chen Ong said indifferently, Forget it. You haven't even opened your eyes. How can you explore? Chase after it? It's a ghost. It will inevitably wander in the sky of this world again. It will shout, There has never been a savior. We don't rely on gods and emperors. We have to rely on ourselves to create human happiness. Compared to that specter, your so-called ambitions are too laughable. Commander-in-Chief. Huang Shang frowned. I'm just kidding. I thought of a real traitor. Compared to that, the Ming cult is just a disease. If we have disciples like Qing Pan, Chen Ku, and Li Desheng, we'll be a big problem for the imperial court. Chen Ong waved his hand. Huang Shang didn't understand, so he just stood on the side in silence. The Ming cult people didn't feel anything either. Deng Yuanjue, however, had a thoughtful look in his eyes. Suddenly a large crack appeared under Ming Zun's platform. Fang La leaped up and brandished the iron staff in Ming Zun's hand, blocking the way in front of the crowd. He shouted, Quickly get inside. Run inside. Not only did the Song army fail to react, even the Ming cult members were startled. Chen Ong, on the other hand, looked indifferent as he said leisurely, So you're testing me as an informant because you want to know if I know about this secret passage or not. Looks like you're not sure that the Holy Maiden doesn't know about this place. This is the most confidential place in the Ming cult. Only the hierarch of each generation knows about it. But I was too careless. I wasn't sure if I had leaked this information in front of Roji. Bai Shang. That's why I tested you, Fang La explained to buy time for the women and children behind him. What he didn't know was that Chen Ong had no intention of keeping them here. That was why he was nagging. He was oppressing a group of Wulin sects, not wiping them out. If he couldn't let Fang La escape, how could he work hard and push the martial arts of the Ming cult to a higher level? At this time, Deng Yuanjue suddenly pointed a finger behind Fang La's back and sealed his major acupoint. Before the Ming cult members could react in shock, Deng Yuanjue shoved a cult leader over. They supported Fang La and retreated to the entrance of the cave. They saw this big monk standing in front of them with his iron staff. You take the hierarch and leave first. I'll block the pursuers for you, Deng Yuanjue said in a low voice. Looking at the sorrowful followers, he laughed and said, Go now. Don't act like a little girl. As he spoke, He reached out and touched Mingzun. The underground tunnel began to shake. The crowd quickly retreated to the depths of the tunnel. They saw hundreds of thousands of kilograms of earth and rocks suddenly collapse and seal the entrance tightly, separating them from Deng Yuanjue. Deng Yuanjue was the one who knew about the secret passage. He seemed to be rough, but he was actually a meticulous person. He had discovered this secret long ago. Deng Yuanjue looked calm. He put his palms together and said, "I'll surrender. I don't know how you're going to deal with these followers. I'm willing to join them." He had the last chance to escape. With his body movement, it was not difficult for him to flash into the tunnel before it collapsed. The Ming cult people thought he was going to stall Chen Ong. But in fact, he was going to live and die with the tens of thousands of followers here. The West Xia army was defeated the day before yesterday. The king of West Xia was captured. The Hutao area is in the hands of the Song dynasty. In the Qingtang, the West region needs Han people to guard the border. You Ming cult people are skilled in martial arts and outstanding in archery and horseback riding. You can intimidate those restless Dongxiang people. There are hundreds of thousands of followers here. You should migrate to the border. Chen Ong smiled and said, "You can attack the West region and spread your religion there. But the people there are tough, so you must be careful. I haven't been to the West region, but I heard that the bright peak on Mount Kunlun is a good place." Deng Yuanjue bowed slightly and stood among the followers. When they heard that they were going to leave their homeland, there was a bit of commotion. But to be able to keep their lives is already a good thing. They can only rejoice. Chen Ong smiled and said to Huang Shang, "If there is no migration in the newly expanded land, it will be unstable. But the Song dynasty is rich. Even if there is no land, they can still make a living. Who would be willing to leave their homeland? I even suggested to the government to capture all the wanderers and beggars. All the young and strong people are to be sent to the border of West Xia." Huang Shang said cautiously, "I'm afraid that West Xia will retaliate and disturb the border. It will be difficult to produce peacefully. Isn't it the duty of the Forbidden Martial Hall to protect the people and prevent West Xia's counterattack? The Du-Si Imperial Army will make West Xia unable to retaliate. The Imperial Court has already passed the 36 prohibitions. It is time to show off. The Ming cult alone is far from enough. Six Fan School has sent dozens of Wulin sects with blood debts and Lulin villages. We must show the Wulin the power of the Imperial Court." Chen Ong said coldly, "Chase after Fong La and eliminate these scum one by one." Chapter 61. I have fought for 3,000 miles, and I have fought against millions with my sword. After the intense feeling, there was only endless loneliness. On Taihang Mountain, the grass and trees were green. But under the vast expanse of greenery, there was only the sound of birds chirping, which made the place feel desolate. Chen Ong stood halfway up the mountain, looking down at the vast sky and earth. It was a lonely shadow, especially desolate. As far as the eye could see, the vast Taihang Mountain was towering, like an elder that had existed since ancient times. It was benevolent and dignified, silent and loyal. It had watched over the thousands of years, and the joys and sorrows of the human world at the foot of the majestic Taihang Mountain. Chen Ong was a bit lost in thought. He deeply felt the loneliness. It was as if time had passed, and the calmness that settled everything, the bleakness of seeing through the world of mortals. He could not help but think, if thousands of years pass, I will be like Taihang, leisurely and indifferent. In the face of strong will and strong emotions, even if it was sublimated, even if it was unforgettable, would it be able to fight against the merciless time? To experience all of this, to see the beauty turn into bones, to see the sea turn into mulberry fields, would he be able to maintain his original heart? The most merciless thing in the world was time. Time kills without a sound, without a trace, without blood. Often unknowingly it can change a person. Looking back, he felt that the person of the past was somewhat strange and unrecognizable. Chen Ong laughed self-deprecatingly. He didn't know if pursuing that elusive goal would change him. He also didn't know if the scenery in front of him would be the scenery he liked. But to experience the world and sublimate the wonders of life was more meaningful than everything he had done before. He knew what he was worried about. His feelings were getting weaker and weaker, and his heart was getting more and more lonely. One day there would be nothing in the world that could move him. This was partly because of the overclocking state, but more because of time. He had thought that his indifference was because he was heartless, but later he found out that it might also be because he had seen through it. The washing of time would bring Chen Ong closer and closer to the state of an immortal. He was on the mountain, far away from the world of mortals. Only the hot-blooded, chivalrous in his bones could make him look like a human. Chen Ong shook his head. The blue light in his eyes faded away. He had accidentally touched the soul of Taihang, which almost made him lose himself in the ancient times. Human emotions could not stand the test of time. It was better not to do such dangerous things in the future. Breaking away from the influence of this Taoism, Chen Ong saw Huang Chang walking towards him. This scholar of the Dragon Diagram Pavilion, a Hanlin, had already lost a bit of the inexperience of a scholar and was becoming more and more like a grandmaster. Over the past few days, the Jianghu's trials had allowed this martial arts prodigy, an unpolished jade in the Jianghu, to have a corner of the brilliance of a fine jade. Commander-in-Chief, the leaders of the 18 strongholds of Taihang have been beheaded. Only the military advisor, the white-robed scholar Wang Luan, has escaped. Should the martial prohibition hall pursue him? Are we going to return the women and the children they gave birth to from the stronghold to their original villages? There's no need for that. That would be forcing them to their death. Change those in the strongholds who have no blood debts and who have committed lesser crimes to imprisonment in Western Xia. Ask those women if they are willing to go with them. If they are willing, send them back to their families. If they are not, settle them where they are. Chen Ong stood with his hands clasped behind his back. Bring the orphans who have lost their parents back to the martial prohibition hall. Teach them martial arts and literature and train them according to the military system. Call them the Yulin Royal Guards and prepare them for the Dragon and Crouching Tiger Guards. Yes. Hearing this, Huang Chang's face relaxed imperceptibly. The days of killing had made him tired. No one liked to kill. Everyone had a heart of compassion. Fighting for a better treatment for these orphans also made him feel at ease. Commander-in-Chief, the 15 strongholds and sects with great resentment have been cleared. Below them are the people of the Jianghu who have blood debts, the local gangs, the Ocean Sand Gang, and the Third River Gang. Do you want the Dragon Stallion Guard to go ahead and clean up the Wang stronghold? The Dragon Stallion Guards at the Diagonal Dragon Ridge are already on standby. The cavalry of the Dragon Stallion Guard galloped like the wind. Other than the pursuit of Fang La, where Chen Ong personally led the troops to pull out the stubborn nails, the rest of the Dragon Stallion Guard split into small groups to attack their targets. Often, they would travel 100 li in a single day. With the speed of the wind, they were able to completely exterminate the sects on the 6 doors blacklist in a few short days. Often, it would take a few days for the local powers to vaguely receive some news. Before the entire Jianghu could react, the entire Jianghu would be cleared out. This is not something we should worry about. Have the 6 doors arrest warrant. The local authorities have already received the 36 martial prohibition decrees. They will naturally suppress them. If they dare to resist the authorities, that will be the time for us to act, Chen Ong said indifferently. He suddenly smiled. Right now, the most important thing is to clearly investigate the shocking case of Kai Daren's death by the beggar sect's dragon subduing palm. Now that the court is boiling with resentment, the beggar sect must be severely punished. Huang Chang was slightly taken aback. He silently lowered his head. He had clearly heard who had asked the official, "Who is the person they want to kill the most?" and who had killed Kai Jing with such a powerful palm strike. He sighed deeply. The beggar sect's master, Qiao Feng, was on the battlefield of the Liao and Song dynasties. Countless soldiers can prove it. The beggar sect has hundreds of thousands of members, but there is no concrete evidence. I'm afraid they won't accept it. Evidence? Does the court need evidence? Chen Ong looked at him with a faint smile. In this world, besides the beggar sect, is there any other sect that knows the dragon-subduing palm? If it wasn't the beggar sect, then who did it? As for Qiao Feng, is there no one else who knows the dragon-subduing palm? I think even the elders of the beggar sect could have done it. As he said this, there was not the slightest bit of embarrassment on his face. It was as if the beggar sect had really killed someone. But the beggar sect members. Huang Chang was still hesitating. The beggar sect members, hundreds of thousands of beggar sect members, this is their evidence. Chen Ong looked at him and said with a smile, hundreds of thousands of people who don't work in production. They beg and extort money for a living. They can't pay taxes to the Song dynasty. Such a large underground gang has long been a thorn in the hearts of the ministers in the court. As for evidence, there's no need. We are the officials, our words are evidence. If the beggar sect does not give us an explanation, then it will be seeking death. The Song dynasty will not let this go. Huang Shang took a deep breath and sighed, but Qiao Feng fought for the country and the people against the Liao and the Xia. His meritorious service was unparalleled. Many members of the beggar clan also died defending the country. I'm afraid this kind of loyalty is disappointing. The beggar sect has two factions. Who are our friends and who are our enemies, we need to be clear. The dirty clothes faction is made up of people of the lower class. They have a lot of people, but most of them are poor people looking for food. The beggar sect has hundreds of thousands of members, and most of them are like this. They join the beggar sect to find someone to rely on to survive. These people are the friends of the court because the court can also be their support. Qiao Feng and the elders of the beggar sect are like this. They are loyal to the country and can be the protectors of the Song dynasty. They are suitable for immigration. But the clean clothes faction is different. They have been practicing martial arts for generations and are the main force of the beggar sect. Usually, they are local tyrants who use the beggar sect as a pivot to protect themselves. Although they are called the beggar sect, they are actually local tyrants. If they control the poor people of the beggar sect, they will be a big problem for the court. Therefore, the court supports the dirty clothes faction to fight against them. Huang Chang finally understood. So this time, they are suppressing the clean clothes faction and moving the dirty clothes faction to Western Xia. At the same time, they are expelling the influence of the clean clothes faction. Chen Ong clasped his hands behind his back and turned around. Without looking back, he walked towards the stronghold. A dozen horses were tied there, leisurely gnawing at the grass on the ground. Chen Eng's voice came from behind him. We are going to the beggar sect assembly. That is a grand event of the martial world. All sorts of people were coming. The clean clothes faction, the dirty clothes faction, a group of half-baked rebels, Western Xia's first-class hall, the heir of Dali, and the plot that had provoked the Liao Song several decades ago to overthrow the Great Song. The victims and the persecutors, the heroes and traitors, the righteousness of the country and the loyalty of brothers. Several dozen red-clothed knights followed behind Chen Ong. As Chen Ong led his horse, he glanced at Huang Chang. The dragon stallion guard behind him was already ready to depart. The procession rode off without so much as a glance back, leaving behind only the local officials to deal with the aftermath. Huang Chang watched as the group of people turned into a cloud of dust. In just a few breaths, all that was left was a faint cloud of dust. Only Chen Eng's low voice came from the distance, echoing in the air. The green robe is upright and upright, treading the dangerous peak, the jade wall shines brightly under the moonlight. The fragrance of the swift horse is faint, the tall man on the precipice is far away, the light of each step is marked. Which family's son is whose courtyard, there is no regret. The roar of the tiger and the cry of the dragon, changing the nest of the Luan and the phoenix, the sword energy rises in the air like green smoke. Always infatuated, from now on drunk, listening to the fragrance in the waterside pavilion, giving pointers to the play of heroes. Drinking 1,000 cups of wine in a play, the affairs of a man. In the apricot forest, discussing the friendship of a lifetime. Huang Chang stood solemnly for a moment, then mounted his horse and chased after them. Chapter 62. Chen Ong brought along a few dozen riders, traveling swiftly and lightly all the way south. After a few days, they had already arrived within the borders of Suzhou. Even though they stopped at relay stations along the way, the continuous days of traveling had already caused everyone to be exhausted, and they had no choice but to find another place to rest. Wuxi was bustling with people. The wind was warm and the people were dressed like officials, so no one dared to provoke them. They heard about the famous building of pines and cranes, which was famous in Wuxi. They immediately led their horses there. Sure enough, not far from them, they could smell caramel, soy sauce, and cooked meat. This group of people were travel-worn. With one glance, it was obvious that they were guests from afar. The waiter was very perceptive. Seeing Chen Ang's embroidered official robe, he arranged a good private room for him and served a dozen or so meat dishes. He led the red-robed knights to the other side and sat down, leaving the best room for Chen Ong, Huang Chang, and a group of palace guards. The two imperial bodyguards had suffered greatly these past few days. They had been confident in their status and martial arts, but none of the other members of the stalwart dragon guard had surpassed them. Chen Ang's actions had shocked them, and they felt that the opponent's martial arts had reached an inconceivable level. They no longer dared to be negligent. Now that things had calmed down, the two quickly came forward and said, "Governor's martial arts are outstanding. You have already flattened the Wulin world of the Central Plains. The dozens of Lulin strongholds have been old bandits for many years and have been a threat to Jianghu for a long time. Now that Governor's horse has arrived, the golden cities and hot ponds have been turned into ashes, shaking the Wulin world for thousands of miles." Chen Ong listened to their flattery, but he didn't show any happiness on his face. The two were so anxious that they became dizzy. As imperial bodyguards, their martial arts hadn't improved a bit, but they had learned to be slippery. In a moment of anxiety, they dared to say anything. One of the imperial bodyguards whispered, "The beggar clan is the #1 clan in the world. Their experts are as many as the clouds and their eyes and ears are all over the world. In the Central Plains, the governor has imposed a ban on martial arts. Although right now the beggar clan is still a big force, the funny thing is that they still don't know that when the big tree is about to fall, when the governor's troops and horses arrive, the wolf will run and the boar will scatter. That will be their best ending." Chen Ong sighed inwardly. This officialdom was really a place to raise useless people. When these two were in Jianghu, they still had some heroic spirit, but now they were no different from villains in danger. Compared to Murong Fu's 4 great generals, they were incomparable. Compared to the beggar sect and the heroes of the martial arts world, they were not worth mentioning. He slowly tasted the food on the table, and only after a long time did he put down his chopsticks. Facing the two men who were trying their best to flatter him and leak military intelligence, he said in a low voice, "The beggar clan has eyes and ears all over the world. By saying that, have you ever considered the feelings of the beggar clan brothers? The imperial court sent us here to commend the beggar clan's loyalty and justice, at the same time to promote the harmonious development of the beggar clan. Although we still have to investigate the beggar clan's suspected assassination of Kai Darren, we believe that the beggar clan has been deceived by a small group of scum. By saying that, you really don't consider the feelings of the beggar clan brothers next door at all." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone stood up and looked at the curtain. Suddenly, there was a sound of something crashing behind them. Everyone turned their heads in surprise. Only Huang Chang and Chen Ong were smiling as they looked at where they stood. They saw a black shadow jump out from the curtain and touch the windowsill. Then, like a sharp arrow, it shot out of the window. The black shadow snatched the horses they had tied in the courtyard and galloped out of the city. When the riders in red heard the noise, they all ran over. The faces of the 2 imperial bodyguards changed. They trembled and said, "Commander-in-Chief, quickly chase after him. There's no hurry. Let's settle the bill first," Chen Ong said with a smile. When the 2 heard this, their vision darkened. This building of pines and cranes was obviously a business for the beggar clan to gather information, but Chen Ong still wanted to settle the bill. "We are officials of the imperial court. When we go out, we have to maintain the image of the imperial court. We can't do something like dine and dash. You must bear this in mind." Chen Ong leisurely explained a lot of things to them. Under their burning gazes, he leisurely followed the official road. The beggar clan disciple was extremely desperate. Unexpectedly, he didn't follow the official road, but took a small path instead. Chen Ong and the others had changed their horses, so they were tired from chasing him. Unexpectedly, they could only catch him outside the apricot forest. That person's breathing was rapid and unstable because Chen Ang's voice had broken his turtle breathing art in the building of pines and cranes. Now that he had forced himself to focus and run for several li, he could no longer hold on. Just as he reached Xiaofeng, he suddenly collapsed. Chen Ong leisurely stood on a high hill, looking at the mess. The beggar clan had been divided into 2 groups, and they were facing each other. Several Jianghu elders stood solemnly on the side. The atmosphere was extremely strange. Chen Ong saw Xiaofeng's blood-stained linen robe. He looked majestic and heroic. He couldn't help but secretly praise him. "Good man, a great hero." Xiaofeng cupped his fists toward Chen Ong and asked in a deep voice, "Who are you? Why have you come to our beggar clan's gathering place?" Everyone looked at him, their eyes filled with surprise. Only Duan Yu, a hothead, greeted Chen Ong with a smile. Chen Ong smiled and said, "I am Chen Ong, the commander-in-chief of the Imperial Guards of the Great Song's Su Hall. Greetings, clan leader Qiao." The Jianghu warriors present had just heard of his name and were in an uproar. The beggar clan people were even more surprised. They thought, is the imperial court really going to attack the beggar clan? The Wulin people had mixed feelings about the imperial court. On the one hand, they were secretly opposed to the imperial court. On the other hand, they were loyal to the emperor and the country. They could not bear the shackles of the imperial court, but they were loyal. At this time, Chen Ong appeared as the commander-in-chief of the imperial court and interfered in Jianghu affairs. This was something that had never happened before. For a moment, half of the people present were at a loss. They didn't know how they should face Chen Ong. The beggar clan and the imperial court had always cooperated. Although their relationship was not close, they were not hostile. Xiaofeng said, "Since you are a brother of the Imperial Guards, why don't you sit down? Today, the warriors of the Wulin world will bear witness to my identity. My resignation from the beggar clan's clan leader position should be witnessed by the Imperial Court." He turned around to face the beggar clan people and laughed. "I am a good friend of the beggar clan brothers. We drank strong wine and ate dog meat to fight against the Liao dynasty. I, Xiaofeng, am deeply grateful that you are willing to recognize me as your brother. Now that my identity is unknown, I cannot assume the beggar clan leader position no matter what. I only hope that after I, Xiaofeng, leave, you can get rid of the estrangement between us. The beggar clan is the #1 clan in Jianghu. Its prestige is illustrious. Who in the Wulin world does not respect it? The brothers of the beggar clan should be as close as a family. We must not let outsiders laugh at us." His words were spoken with great sincerity. The crowd of beggar clan members originally valued Ichi above all else, but listening to him, they all felt ashamed. Xiaofeng was magnanimous. Although he had encountered a great change, he did not show any resentment or anger on his face. Before he left, he was still thinking about the beggar clan. He respectfully handed the dog-beating stick to Chuan Gong Zhonglao. Just like that, he turned around and left. The crowd saw that even though he had encountered such a great change, not only he did not look desolate, he looked unyielding, his back was as straight as a pencil. Looking at his robe soaked with blood, they could not help but feel grief. Immediately someone shouted, "Bangzhu, don't go! The beggar clan depends on you to manage the situation. Bangzhu, come back quickly!" Chen Ong could not help shaking his head and sighing. He said, "Since Qiao Daxia has resigned from the beggar clan's Bangzhu position, I would like to ask all of you to quickly come up with a plan." The Ministry of Revenue's Minister Kai Jing, Kai Darren, was hacked to death in his home with the dragon-subduing palm. The beggar clan must give the imperial court an explanation for this matter. As soon as he said that, all the beggar clan disciples present glared at him. Only Su Zhonglao hesitated for a moment and then said in a loud and clear voice, "You are right. Our clan cannot be without a leader for a single day. After Qiao Feng has passed away, the clan's important matter needs someone to make the decision. This is an urgent matter that cannot be delayed. In any case, our innocence will be cleared." Chen Ong continued, "Take your time to choose the Bangzhu position. No matter who it is, he or she must come with me to the 6th Fan School to give us an explanation." His words were like pouring oil on the fire. Among the people present, who did not regard going to the 6th Fan School as a great humiliation, seeing him being humiliated like this, someone was not convinced and said, "What right does the imperial court have to arrest our Bangzhu? It's not that we want to resist the arrest of your Bangzhu. It's just that Lord Kai is dead. You should give an explanation to the 6th Fan School and ask your Bangzhu to make an exception. Don't tell me that a high-ranking official of the imperial court has died in vain?" Chen Ong explained. "You want to avenge Deputy Bangzhu Ma, but we also want to arrest the murderer who killed Lord Kai. You have to understand the imperial court." Hearing this, the crowd felt that he was right. However, they would never hand over their Bangzhu. Immediately, Su Zhonglao hesitated and said, "Our Bangzhu hasn't been decided yet. We can only ask for your understanding." "I don't care. It's just that you can't afford to wait in the imperial court." Chen Ong said leisurely, "I won't make things difficult for you. You just have to bring the murderer to the 6th Fan School within 3 months." Elder Su hesitated and said, "Our Bangzhu is in chaos. I'm afraid that 3 months is not enough." Chen Ong said with a cold smile, "Elder Su, are you trying to bargain with me?" Elder Su said in fear, I don't dare." Seeing his servile manner, the beggar clan disciples thought of Qiao Feng's heroic and generous attitude and felt that it was not worth it. Chen Ong was behaving like an official of the imperial court. Although he wasn't condescending, he was still overbearing. However, he had angered someone. Someone took a step forward and waved his folding fan, saying, "That's not true, that's not true. This dragon-subduing palm, you can practice it, I can also practice it. There's no way to explain it. Look at my move, isn't it the dragon-subduing palm?" It turned out to be Bao Butong. Because of the Murong family's underworld forces, he had been uprooted by Chen Ong and was in a terrible situation. Because of this, he was delayed. Seeing Chen Ang's official robes, he couldn't help but mock him. Bao Butong laughed loudly and suddenly leaped forward. He exerted all his strength and struck the apricot tree with his palms, causing the surrounding trees to tremble. Leaves rustled and fell. 8 layers of the tree's branches and leaves fell. His palm strength was really strong. Seeing this, Chen Ong burst into laughter. Bao Butong was puzzled. He said mockingly, "Could it be that my palm has scratched your itch? Why are you laughing?" "I'm laughing because I finally have a way to close the case." Chen Ong laughed coldly. "So it's the Murong family's dead leftover. Since you said you know the dragon-subduing palm, then what are you waiting for? The murderer is you. Chapter 63. The two Murong family warriors, Zhu, Bai and Wang Yuyan, were so anxious that their faces turned red. Even though the Murong family was wealthy, they could not afford to offend the imperial court. Even though they secretly wanted to restore their country, on the surface, they kept a respectful distance from the imperial court and did not dare to offend them. Otherwise, under the siege of the army, they would not be able to restore their country. They would become stray dogs and face the danger of having their families destroyed. Bao Butong would never have thought that he would provoke such a muddle-headed official like Chen Ong, who would distort the truth. It seemed that Chen Ong was openly framing him, with the intention of exterminating his entire family. Master Zhiguang put his palms together and said righteously, "Benefactor, you are exaggerating. Even though Benefactor Bao's palm power is strong, it cannot be compared to the beggar clan's dragon subduing divine palm. Please reconsider." "Then, Master, do you mean that it was the beggar clan who did it?" Chen Ong asked with a smile. Master Zhiguang hurriedly explained, "I didn't mean it that way. The people of the beggar clan understand the righteousness of their country and are patriotic heroes. They have sacrificed their lives for the great song, shed their blood, and fought for meritorious services. They would never do such a thing." "That's right. The beggar clan would never do such a thing. Someone has to take responsibility. I think this Xianbei bastard has a rebellious streak in his brain. He is not a good person. Since he served the Empress of Later Yen as his master, he must have a plan to restore his country. Killing him is not a bad thing." Chen Ong said righteously, "This way, I can answer to the imperial court and the beggar clan's loyalty will be preserved. Isn't that great?" Most of the beggar clan people did not have a good impression of Xianbei Hu Zhong, plus they hated Murong Fu for causing Qiao Feng to resign from the Bangzhou position. Among them, more than half suspected that Murong Fu had killed Ma Diyuan. Seeing the Murong family was helping them to block the calamity, half of them showed a happy expression. Only the two elders who were loyal to Qiao Feng, Chuan Gong and Law Enforcer, were not willing. Chuan Gong elder said, "This matter is not only related to the imperial court but also the beggar clan. The beggar clan is willing to catch the culprit and seek justice for official Kai. At the same time, we want to find out who secretly learned the dragon subduing divine palm." He saw that some of the beggars showed disapproval and shouted, "The beggar clan is 1 and 2. How can we let others help us? When Chief Qiao was alive, he suffered a lot and went through many trials. Have you ever seen him frown? The beggar clan will not deceive the world. Today that person framed us, we have Murong family to block the disaster. Tomorrow, he will use the same trick again, who will come?" His words were filled with awe-inspiring righteousness, they were very reasonable. When the crowd of beggars heard this, even if they were dissatisfied with Murong family, they forced themselves to suppress it. Only Su Zhonglao, Quan Guanqing and the others were submissive. Elder Su tried his best to smooth things over. Quan Guanqing bluntly said, "What officials said is right. The Murong family's Big Dipper shift of the stars is incomparably marvelous. They were able to kill Wulin people with their unique skill. Obviously they are proficient in hundreds of martial arts. If someone used this skill to commit a crime, they are the most likely suspects." Chen Ong waved his hand and said with a smile, "I am just giving you a suggestion. The Murong family has long violated the imperial court's law, they are treason and heresy. This time I am here partly because of the Murong family's attempt to restore their country. Their property is about to be confiscated and exterminated. I thought one more crime wouldn't matter. But since you are not willing, I am happy to be free." The beggar clan had never seen such an honest official who could speak so confidently about framing others. For a moment they were speechless. Many of them thought that the way Chen Ong handled things was really interesting. On the other side, Wang Yuyan and the others' faces turned pale. "You are talking nonsense," she said in fear. "Cousin would not do such a thing." Chen Ong laughed coldly. Don't you know whether he would do such a thing or not? Wang Yuyan recalled her cousin's great cause, and his various ambitions. For a moment she was speechless. Everyone at the scene was experienced in Jianghu, they were very smart. Seeing the expression on her face, they believed her a little. Master Zhi Guang put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. In an instant, the few people from the Murong clan were vaguely excluded. Only the silly Duan Yu was still anxiously surrounding Wang Yuyan. Bao Butong said anxiously, "You dog official, your mouth stinks. Your mouth is full of nonsense. With your ability to distort the truth, how can I not say anything? You don't have a single bit of evidence. You're just speaking empty words, there's no proof on paper. You can say whatever you want, but my Murong family will never dare to admit it." Ha ha! Chen Ong laughed out loud. Does the imperial court still need evidence to handle matters? Naive. Chen Ong said in a heavy tone. When the crowd heard this, they didn't know what to say. They didn't have any standpoint nor did they need to speak up for the Murong family. However, Chen Eng's attitude of "I am the law is the law" made them frown. Only Duan Yu was left. Seeing that Wang Yuyan was on the verge of tears, he stepped forward with a pained expression on his face and said, "Brother, you're wrong. You need evidence and you can't do things without evidence." Everyone looked at his pretty boy face and laughed secretly. They were ready to see him make a fool of himself. But Chen Ong suddenly changed his expression and said gently, "Since it is the Crown Prince's request, of course we need evidence." Everyone was shocked. They did not understand why Chen Eng's attitude changed so much. Just now, he was acting like a high-ranking official. Why did he suddenly become so friendly to that kid? Duan Yu was also surprised. "You know my identity? Dali and the Song dynasty are friendly neighbors. Little brother, you are the Crown Prince of Dali. You are an honored guest of our country. We need evidence. We can't let our country be surprised." Chen Ong said gently. Everyone was depressed. Some of the beggar sect disciples were angry. They were cursing in their hearts. "Our country is surprised. You are so servile. You are really the imperial court. You are not afraid of the public's anger. You are just saying that our country is surprised and you want evidence?" Chen Ong tilted his head and saw Huang Cheng's look of approval. He could not help but feel funny. But he still had to pretend to be a dog of the imperial court. He gestured to Huang Chang, and Huang Chang shook out a pile of random things from behind him. Bao Butong saw it and his face finally broke. He looked at the small flag and symbol on the ground in fear. Yunzhou's Qin village, 18 villages of Taihang, one village. Take a look. What is missing? Chen Ong said with a smile. Are you surprised that the Yen flag was exposed? Your Murong family recruited people from the underworld and issued the black Yen flag. Those who received it will follow the Murong family's orders. Chen Ong snorted coldly. I have witnesses and material evidence here. I won't allow you to quibble. Everyone looked at the ground. Indeed, there were weapons and flags with the Yen symbol on them. They were all made of black satin. They were beautiful and glowed. Some people with sharp eyes recognized them. They were the special satin of the Murong family's Suzhou workshop. It was difficult for outsiders to imitate them. Bao Budong's head was dripping with cold sweat. He forced himself to say, "No, no. Our Murong family is a business. You can buy this cloth, he can also buy it. How can we use it as evidence?" Everyone had already believed 80 to 80% of his words, so how could they allow him to quibble? Elder Wu was the most unyielding. He was grateful for Qiao Feng's great kindness and respected his character. He was extremely angry at the Murong family for causing Qiao Feng to leave, so he sternly shouted, "Xianbei Hu, the evidence is conclusive, how can you quibble?" Chen Ong said with a smile, "I have evidence here." Everyone was shocked. What evidence? Chen Ong coldly uttered 4 words, "Return the water pavilion." These words were like thunder that hit the Murong family members. Wang Yuyan's face turned pale. Chen Ong asked Master Zhiguang coldly, "You once said that the Liao people wanted to steal the Shaolin Temple's sutra depository. This is a matter that threatens the foundation of the Song dynasty. If someone stole all the secret manuals of the martial arts world, wouldn't that mean they were up to no good?" Master Zhiguang chanted, "Sin, it's all sin. What a sin. We'll talk about your matter later. The Murong family's water pavilion has all the martial arts secret manuals of all the sects in the world. How did they get them? What are they up to? Isn't this a piece of evidence?" When the people present heard that their own martial arts had been leaked, how could they not be filled with righteous indignation? They shouted in unison, "Of course! Stealing other people's martial arts is the most despicable thing. He really is a person with evil intentions." Bao Budong saw the beggar clan and martial arts people shouting in unison. He knew that the situation was hopeless. He carefully protected Wang Yuyan, Ah Zhu and Ah Bai and retreated. Feng Polio also stood in front of them to protect them. Unexpectedly, the angry beggar clan disciples surrounded them. Even though Duan Yu was anxious, he could not do anything. "I have a third piece of evidence here," Chen Ong said loudly. When he saw everyone looking at him, he smiled and looked back at Master Zhiguang. "This is a conspiracy that has been going on for decades. You found out about the Murong family's dirty deeds 10 years ago, right, Master? Outside Yanmen Pass, who is the accomplice? Under the vengeful spirits, have you been sleeping well these few years?" Master Zhiguang's face was pale. He lowered his eyes and said, "I have not slept for decades. Every time I close my eyes, I think of that sin. I only wish to use my broken body to resolve this evil fate." Chapter 64. Hearing his words, the crowd of beggars looked at each other. They did not know if this was a slip of the tongue or if it was intentional. Ever since Chen Ong appeared, he had been too unpredictable. His temper was unpredictable and no one knew what he was like. Shaolin was the #1 sect in the Wulin world and had always been the pillar of Jianghu. Chen Eng's words undoubtedly disgraced Shaolin and humiliated its reputation. However, he was unpredictable and was an official of the imperial court. No one knew if he said it unintentionally or if he was mocking him. They could only look at Master Zhiguang. Master Zhiguang was silent for a while and sighed. "This evil was caused by us. What does it have to do with Shaolin? A monk does not lie. Big monk, did you eat your own face?" Chen Ong laughed coldly. "Don't think that I am that stupid. They don't know and I don't know?" The tragedy outside Yanmen Pass was caused by the Xianbei rebels colluding with the scum of Wulin to create a conflict between Liao and Song. They wanted to start a war between the two countries and restore the country. The Forbidden Martial Hall has been investigating this for many years. When the beggar clan members heard him insult Master Zhiguang, they all looked indignant. When they heard the Xianbei rebels colluding with the scum of Wulin, they were all shocked. Wu Zhonglao looked at the Murong clan members who were on high alert and said, "Could it be that the leader is Murong Bo from Swallow Dock who died long ago?" Reverend Zhi Guang, Zhao Qiansun, Elder Tan and Elder Tan all had a strange expression on their faces. They seemed to be ashamed, fearful and magnanimous. Danjing snorted angrily. He brandished his saber and charged towards Chen Ong. He shouted sternly, "You dog official, how can you distort the truth like this?" His saber skills were swift and fierce. One slash was followed by a grab. The crowd saw his agile movements and secretly cheered. At the same time, they were worried for him. Why is Hero Dan so impulsive? He has a family and a career. If he offends an official of the imperial court, won't he be in trouble? That dog official can't tell right from wrong. How hateful! To his surprise, Chen Ong only shook his hand casually and grabbed Danjing's neck. He shook him twice, and a gush of energy shook Danjing's muscles and bones. Chen Ong landed on the ground and stepped on Danjing's head. The iron-masked Judge Danjing was a famous figure in the Chinese world of martial arts, and no one in the area dared to say that they could defeat him. Even Zhao Qiansun was almost on par with him. But now, he was like a child in Qin Eng's hands, unable to fight back at all. He was easily trampled on and humiliated, and all the onlookers were dumbfounded. Could this person be a demon? Zhao Qiansun shrieked and shrank back, his face filled with fear. Granny Tan knew that he was recalling a figure that resembled both a god and a devil, so she wanted to go up and comfort him. Qin Eng's martial arts shocked everyone present. How could Master Tan dare to let her leave his side? He quickly pulled her back. The people from the beggar clan could not react in time and hesitated at the side. They only had one thought in their mind: this official's martial arts is so powerful. The imperial court actually has such a martial arts expert? Master Zhiguang could not help but say, Governor Chen, Dan Jing is just anxious. Let's talk nicely, don't harm his life. He is an important suspect. Not only will I not harm him, but I will also try my best to protect his life. Chen Ong said indifferently, Master Zhiguang, don't treat me as a fool. Let me ask you, is the leader the abbot of Shaolin Temple, Xian Ci? Master Zhiguang put his palms together. His expression was unpredictable, and his body faintly emitted a resolute aura. You want to commit suicide? Think about Danjing first. Chen Ong stepped on Danjing's head, forcing him to shout. Master Zhiguang could not bear it, so he turned his head and said in a deep voice, Amitba, almsgiver, please let Hero Dan go. I am willing to do it for him. Hero? Is he worthy? Chen Ong sneered. If you still refuse to say, then I will tell everyone. The Liao people are plotting to take over the Shaolin Sutra depository. No matter how well you put it, or how charming the decorations are, it is still a private matter of Shaolin Temple. The so-called Shaolin consummate skills were learned by the Liao people, and the Song dynasty is in danger of being annihilated, is just to give yourself some face. If this is the case, Shaolin will spread martial arts in the Song dynasty and forbid the soldiers from learning Shaolin consummate skills. Won't they be able to destroy Liao and Xia? If this is the case, if Shaolin does not hand over the martial arts, it will be treason. As martial arts practitioners, who doesn't know that the more profound the martial arts, the harder it is to improve? Without the teachings of Shaolin, how many of the so-called consummate skills can we master? Your Shaolin is talented and diligent. How many of the 72 consummate skills can you master? The so-called Sutra Depository has nothing to do with the Song dynasty. Chen Ong sneered. This is originally a matter of Shaolin Temple. Why do you have to involve the life and death of the country? Do you think you are worthy of the surname Zhao? Master Zhiguang and those who experienced the past all looked gloomy. Although the beggar clan members were angry at Chen Eng's sarcastic tone, they thought carefully and felt that what he said made sense. A bold person whispered, This is indeed a matter of Jianghu. The Song dynasty's martial arts world is more prosperous than the Liao people's, but the Song dynasty can only barely survive under the Liao people's attack. It shows that martial arts has nothing to do with the strength of the country. Zhao Qiansun shrieked, We are working for the country. Is it your turn to come here and mock us? His voice was sorrowful, and there was a hint of injustice. Anyone with good intentions would not be able to remain calm after being accused. Chen Ong also sympathized with them. It was a pity that these people were too stupid. They often did bad things with good intentions. It was best to get rid of them as soon as possible. Work for the country? Who can prove it? Chen Ong said with a black face, I know that there is a traitor among you. Murong family is the royal family of the Yin dynasty. They are Xianbei people. You worked with him to provoke the war between the Liao and the Song dynasty. You wanted to overturn the country and make the two countries bleed. You should know that most of the Liao people are Han people. Is it wrong to say that you are scum of Jianghu? You're making irresponsible remarks. Zhao Qiansuan's face was full of tears. He trembled and staggered. He said angrily, "This is not true. We did not do anything wrong. We were not used by others." He suddenly grabbed Master Zhiguang's collar and asked sternly, "Tell me, did Murong Bo lie to us?" Master Zhiguang lowered his head dejectedly and did not dare to look at him. Zhao Qiansun laughed out loud. His voice was extremely mournful. Every night when it was quiet, he would always think of the massacre outside the Yanmen Pass. His heart was filled with fear and regret. The only belief that supported him was the righteousness of serving the country and the people. Now that his belief was on the verge of collapse, he actually went crazy. You did not do anything wrong. You were just stupid and cheated by others. Even the government did not pursue the fault of an idiot. What are you blaming yourself for? Chen Eng's figure flickered, and he pointed a finger at Zhao Qiansun's body, causing him to collapse and fall into Granny Tan's arms. Granny Tan was exasperated and helpless, and could only shake her head and sigh. The 5 Dan brothers hurriedly helped Dan Jing up. When they saw that his limbs were weak and he couldn't even stand up, they stretched out their hands to help him up. Only then did they realize that Chen Ong had dislocated all the joints in his body. This level of martial arts was truly terrifying. Not to mention the fact that he had easily defeated Zhao Qiansun. Everyone present felt a deep fear towards Chen Ong. The ones who are really at fault are those despicable people who say one thing in front of others and another behind others' back. For example, the leader who only has a title and no one knows his name. Chen Ong looked at Zhiguang and smiled. At this moment, everyone had guessed the origin of the leader. Other than Shaolin monk Xian Ci, who else would have such a stance to fight for Shaolin Temple? Immediately, some people showed dissatisfaction. A few beggar clan disciples even laughed mockingly. I have a clear conscience. Monk Xian Ci also has a clear conscience. Zhiguang put his palms together and said loudly, "If you have a clear conscience, why did you use words to force Qiaofeng? What will you do? Is this the so-called moral coercion? If you don't feel that you have done anything wrong, why do you use all kinds of words to defend yourself? To say that you are sorry and that you are wrong? Is it really that difficult? You are a monk." Chen Ong sneered. His words made the beggar sect disciples feel carefree and their blood was boiling. Especially the low-level disciples, who had eaten wine and eaten meat with Qiaofeng. They deeply admired his spirit of brotherhood. They wholeheartedly accepted Qiaofeng and admired him endlessly. They all looked at Master Zhiguang with mocking eyes, telling him to close his eyes and shake his head. You are a monk, yet you want to fall to the ground when talking about babies. You have compassion for them. Not only did you not reflect on yourself, but you also feel that you are too soft-hearted. It can be seen that you have not the slightest bit of repentance in the past 10 years. Your compassion is all bullshit. That Liao man was killed by you, and yet he was still willing to let you off the hook. It can be seen that you, a monk, are all talk and not in your heart. Chen Ong sighed. Tell me, have you had any repentance in the past few years? If you had the intention, you should have resolved the enmity between the 2 generations. But you are so secretive and hesitant, refusing to say the name of the leader. Your desire for fame and wealth is really harmful. Master Zhiguang meditated on the ground, lowered his head and closed his eyes, not daring to say anything. I suspect that you are colluding with the Murong clan. Because of this, you monks do not seek to repay the debt of blood with your life after committing murder. Instead, you try to cover up the evil in many ways. If you say that you did not do it on purpose, who would believe you? Chen Ong shook his head. Master Zhiguang saw that the beggar clan members were glaring at him. He did not have the strength to explain. I thought that Mr. Murong was also deceived by others. He is already dead. A person's death is like an extinguished lamp. Why bother about what happened after he died? Who said that Murong Bo is dead? Isn't he living well in the back mountain of Shaolin? Once Chen Ong said this, the crowd was in an uproar. Some of the beggar clan members had already picked up a dog-beating stick and was about to hit Ji Guang's head. Master Ji Guang raised his head in shock and asked, "Is this true? Wait until next month, when I interrogate Shaolin, you can come and take a look. During this time, don't commit suicide to escape punishment." Chen Ong said, "Moreover, you are not merciful to the victim, but you are merciful to a criminal who died. You are not ashamed to the orphan, but you are covering up for the person who made you commit such a grave mistake. Not only did you not forgive and accept the cause and effect, you even have the intention to persecute him. You are indeed an enlightened monk." He sighed deeply, showing the elegance of a best actor. People like Xian Ci pretend to be benevolent and righteous. It is hard to distinguish whether he is loyal or treacherous. As the saying goes, great loyalty is like treachery, benevolence is like hypocrisy. Of course, the opposite is also possible. I don't know whether you are sincere or not, and who is in cahoots with Murong Bo. I can only treat everyone equally and investigate everything. Master Ji Guang said quietly, "I was wrong. If this is the truth, please clear my name. Chief Chiao, I have wronged him. I am willing to use the rest of my life to pray for his parents. I will definitely attend the Shaolin meeting and give Chief Chiao an explanation." The beggar clan's impression of Chen Ong suddenly changed. Originally, they were still indignant and felt that the imperial court had insulted their seniors in the martial arts world. Now they actually felt that even though Master Ji Guang was pitiful and lamentable, his conduct was not honorable. On the contrary, Chen Ong, even though he was overbearing, his words were reasonable and could be said to be impartial in enforcing the law. Wu Zhonglao cupped his fists and said, "Thank you for speaking up for our chief. At the Shaolin meeting, our beggar clan will not fall behind. We will definitely clear Chief Chiao's name." Regarding Deputy Chief Ma's matter, needless to say, it must be Murong Bo's doing. Chen Ong said righteously, "Other than him, who else is so clear about Chief Chiao's background? Who else has the miraculous skill of changing the stars? Here, he has the motive and all the conditions. Moreover, he is a Xianbei who. He must have the intention to destroy our great song and specially came to sow discord." Elder Wu and the beggar clan disciples suddenly understood and said fiercely, "That's right, that's right." They looked at the Murong clan's eyes fiercely with an indescribable hatred. They firmly believed in this. The entire beggar clan was filled with anger. They could not wait to kill their way to Swallow Dock to clear Qiao Feng's name and avenge Ma Duan. Elder Su saw that the situation was not good, so he went with the flow and said, "I have wronged Chief Chiao." Only Kong Min and Quan Guanqing, who were at the side, seemed to have something to say. Bai Shijing stared at her fiercely, his eyes filled with the determination to fight to the death. Kong Min knew that if she dared to pour dirty water on Qiao Feng, Bai Shijing would probably kill her and then commit suicide. She quickly shut her mouth. Chapter 65. In Chen Eng's hands, Quan Guanqing was as weak as a 3-year-old child. His bones and muscles were easily shaken off. He was crushed into a ball and thrown to the back to be locked up by the knights. The crowd of beggars did not know why Chen Ong was making things difficult for them. Some of them could not bear to see Quan Guanqing splitting the beggar clan, so for a moment nobody tried to stop him. Only Elder Su stammered and said, "Darren, please listen to me." Quan Guanqing was also deceived by others. His voice had not died away when someone next to him said in a sinister voice, "The beggar clan's group of beggars agreed to meet at Mount Hui, but they did not show up. Turns out they are hiding here sneakily. Hey, 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 what cowards!" It was only then that the beggar clan suddenly remembered that they still had an agreement with the Western Xia's first-class hall at Mount Hui, but they had already sent Xie Fu Duozhu of the Great Righteousness Division to change the date. They had just suffered a great change. How could they still have the mood to meddle with the Western Xia people? Bai Shijing took a step forward and said in a deep voice, "We have important matters to attend to, we don't have time to deal with you clowns." The date has been changed, what's there to talk about? His voice had not died away when suddenly a man flew out from behind the apricot tree and fell straight to the ground. That man's chest was a pool of blood, his throat had been slit. It was Siefu Duoju, who had gone to change the date. By this time he was already dead. The beggar clan people were enraged. Jiang Duoju sternly cursed, "Xiago, you dare to take our family's brother's life. Our two countries are at war and we do not kill the envoy, you have gone too far. Brothers, kill this Xiago." "Ha ha ha." The sinister voice laughed and said, "This man's manner is arrogant, his words are rude. He did not kneel down when he saw our general, how can we let him live?" While pacifying the anxious and angry beggar clan people, Elder Su shouted in a deep voice, "You sneaky lowly person who dares to boast here." The beggar clan people saw that although his words were righteous, he did not say anything about avenging his brother. They felt very wronged and could not help but miss Qiao Feng even more. The man laughed loudly and said, "Who is sneakily hiding in the apricot forest?" Suddenly, he heard the sound of a bugle horn blowing from afar. Then, he faintly heard the sound of a large group of horses' hooves coming from a few miles away. Dozens of horsemen surrounded the flags of Western Xia and Haolian as they galloped into the forest. 8 Western Xia warriors with bulging temples surrounded a horse as they slowly entered the apricot forest. The man on the horse was dressed in a nondescript red brocade robe. He had an aquiline nose and a mustache. A man with a very tall stature and a very big nose followed closely behind him. As soon as he entered the forest, he shouted, "The great general of the Western Xia countries conquering the East has arrived. The beggar clan's clan leader comes forward to pay his respects." The voice sounded eccentric. It was none other than the man who had just spoken. He swept his eyes around and saw Chen Ong and several dozens of horsemen. He stopped on the side and said with a shrill laugh, "Who are you? You dare not to dismount when you see the great general of the Western Xia countries conquering the East?" While saying that, he raised the horsewhip in his hand and whipped it toward Chen Eng's face. The beggar clan people on the ground were laughing incessantly. They were waiting to see these two people make a fool of themselves. Chen Eng's martial arts skill was superior, but the other one was an ally. They wanted to see how these two people would end up. They saw a silver flash in the air. The big-nosed man with the horsewhip fell down from his horse. He struggled to cover his throat. A black swallow-shaped dart was dripping blood. The man struggled for a while, kicked his leg, and then stopped moving. "I haven't been angry for a long time, I'm a bit rusty." Chen Ong wiped his right hand and coldly looked at the dead body on the ground. He sneered and said, "You have already lost your country, yet you still think your surname is Zhao." Then he turned his head to look at the great general of the Eastern Xia country's flag. He slightly raised his right hand and a silver thread suddenly shot out from his back and tore the flag into pieces. It was Huang Chang who gave them a good show. The beggar clan people loudly cheered, "Good! Well done!" The beggar clan people were excited to see the Xixia people suffer a big loss. Chen Ong helplessly turned his head and said, "That's not what I meant." Huang Chang was startled and doubtfully said, "Didn't you tell me to shoot down the flag?" Seeing Chen Ong was blaming them, the beggar clan members hissed loudly, wanting to embarrass this person who flattered them and praised them as their ally. "What's the use of tearing a piece of cloth? I mean, I want you to kill people." Chen Ong sneered coldly. His fingertips slightly flicked, and a few extremely fast dark shadows shot out. An angry shout came from the sky. 4 silhouettes dashed out, and a few weapons brought along a strong wind as they flew towards those dark shadows. In midair, the black shadow suddenly exploded, shooting out hundreds of flying needles. Several warriors of Western Xia clutched their faces and screamed as they fell to the ground. It seemed that they would not be able to survive. A figure holding an iron crutch let out a stern shout. The whistling sound was like a receding tide, shaking people's eyes and ears. A mouthful of superior internal energy broke the flying needles in front of Howlyan Tieshu's body, causing them to stop dangerously in front of his nose. Only a skinny man, who was as tall as a bamboo pole, let out a blood-curdling screech. He covered his right hand and retreated a few steps in a hurry. His figure flashed, and he escaped from the range of the flying needles. The remaining two men each unleashed a strange move. They also easily caught the flying needles. However, there were not many people on the Western Xia's side who were still standing. The beggar clan disciples sucked in a mouthful of cold air. Only now did they realize how cruel Chen Ong was. He killed people without blinking an eye and took people's lives with ease. On one hand, he treated the crown prince of Dali well, on the other hand, he mercilessly killed the Xixia people. The Song dynasty's governor Chen Ong is here. Xixia, a small country's envoy, how dare you not come to pay your respects? Chen Ong put his hands behind his back and said, "You really brought about your own destruction. It's not wrong to kill you." Howlyan Taishu said angrily, "How dare you? We are the Xixia's envoy. Without the king's order, you killed our envoy. How dare you?" He took out a yellow cloth from his waist and held it above his head. "This is the Xixia's letter of credence. You killed our envoy. What crime do you think you deserve?" "Huang Chang, is this true?" Chen Ong asked with a slight frown. Huang Chang pondered for a moment and said seriously, "The Song dynasty does not kill envoys. When two countries are at war, they do not kill envoys." When the beggar clan people heard this, they all frowned and thought, "It's true. In Jianghu, there is a rule that does not kill envoys. The Song dynasty also wants to save face." But they still felt very wronged. The Xixia dared to kill our people and come to Suzhou to cause trouble, but we can't do anything about it. It's really infuriating. The beggar clan people thought angrily. But they heard Chen Ong frown and say, "So, I killed the wrong person?" Huang Chang nodded awkwardly. When Howlyan Taishu heard this, he said arrogantly, "I will definitely report you to the Song Emperor and execute your entire family. Why don't you quickly arrest them?" Chen Ong sighed deeply and said, "How could I be wrong? It must be these bandits and robbers who killed the Western Xia's envoys and stole their flags to disguise themselves as the Western Xia's envoys. The real envoys must have been killed by them. Men, come with me to avenge our Western Xia allies." He immediately turned hostile. A strange light flashed in his hand and Howlyan Taishu fell to the ground, clutching his crotch. If Duan Yanqing hadn't pulled him, the silver nail would have been nailed between his eyebrows. Chen Ong smiled and slowly walked toward the Xixia people. The Xixia envoys couldn't help but retreat. When they saw the warm smile on Chen Ang's face, they couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. Chen Ong killed dozens of people with a smile. When the people saw his smiling face, they felt as if they had fallen into an abyss of darkness. These Xixia warriors were also ruthless characters who had fought hard on the battlefield. However, the moment they saw Chen Ong, they felt as if they had fallen into a boundless darkness. It was as if there were ferocious beasts gnashing their teeth and claws all around them. Everyone present was a master of martial arts, but under this oppressive aura, they didn't dare to make a sound. Duan Yanqing stared at Chen Ang's smiling face with an indifferent look in his eyes. He was the only one whose expression didn't change in the slightest under this strange aura. He faintly said, "Sir, you are very powerful and have great martial arts. We, the four great villains, are just trying to make a living. Can you stop this martial art and let us leave?" This rustling aura was actually a kind of martial art. The people present couldn't help but focus their eyes and fight against this aura. After a while, someone fell to the ground with a pale face due to excessive mental consumption. "Ah, ah, ah!" A boorish man suddenly broke free from the aura and shouted, "Boss, let me do it." Duan Yu saw him and said loudly, "Disciple, why don't you kowtow to your master?" The South Sea crocodile god, Yu Lao San, looked manic and ferocious. He was obviously in a rage. When he saw Duan Yu, he shouted, "Get lost! I don't have a master!" He stretched out his right hand with unparalleled speed. Before he even reached Shenong, a strong gust of wind blew his hair away. A large steel pincer wrapped around Chen Eng's waist. Yu Laosan twisted his waist, and his whole body was like a flipping crocodile, tearing towards Chen Eng's waist. His feet, shoulders, arms, and the big pincers exerted force at the same time. The force ran through his whole body, and the pincers opened and closed with great force.